I've been picked up from airports in taxis before, but never had to go to a jetty. Been picked up by a boat.
He's Piers Taylor, an award-winning architect.
This building is so tactile and just rich materially. And she's Caroline Quentin, acclaimed actress and passionate property developer.
Oh, I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond.
We've been given the keys to some of the most incredible houses in the world.
It's chock full of surprises, isn't it? To discover the design innovation, passion and endurance needed to transform architectural vision into an extraordinary home.
This was Hollywood. I'd be snogging you now.
Together, we'll be travelling the globe.
Oh, look down there.
I would, but I'm trying not to kill us.
No, you look ahead.
Meeting the architects and owners who have taken on the challenge of building unconventional homes in demanding locations. Just another day on the wing of a 747.
Whether it's navigating the logistics of constructing a house on top of a remote mountain.
Why would you build a house where you can only get there by cable car?
Negotiating the ancient trees of a fragile forest. You never see a building this close to the trees. I mean, that's 6 inches away.
Having a sea view whilst perched on the edge of a dramatic coastal shoreline.
I'd love to know how you actually built this on what appears to be a sort of vertical cliff face.
Or excavating the earth to build a home deep underground.
There is always a moment when you feel fear. Nature is never to come back the same way.
No one had ever built something like this before.
It's a tightrope you walk, it can go spectacularly wrong.
Coastal living promises pure sea air, the constant sound of waves, and ever-changing views of the sea.
But building houses so close to the shore in remote locations can be fraught with challenges.
When we were building this house, the 2 winters we hit was really, really bad.
And they were building in these conditions?
I tried to.
Piers and I will be travelling from the windswept islands of Norway to the steep Mediterranean cliffs of southern Spain.
This earth is basically scree, isn't it?
Exactly what it is.
There's nothing solid.
And from the wild Atlantic Ocean of southeast Canada to the flooded coastal valleys of New Zealand. Discovering what it takes to design, build and live in some of the world's most extraordinary coastal homes.
So we'll see you in, what, 6 months?
Yeah.
When the winter comes, come and get your keys.
The first stop on our coastal adventure takes us to Norway and to a group of remote islands, 200 miles southwest of the capital, Oslo.
Although it's early summer now, temperatures in winter can drop as low as -20 in this Nordic archipelago. Any house built on this windswept shoreline needs to be able to withstand everything Mother Nature can throw at it. Let's go.
Our first extraordinary coastal home is a remote island retreat, camouflaged to blend into the surrounding landscape and designed as an antidote to the stresses of the owner's busy work schedules.
The biggest challenge for the architect was how to create a 4-bedroom home within the size restrictions of a pre-existing property, which had a footprint of just 100 square meters. You hear something?
We're being picked up by owner Dag, who's the CEO of a large Norwegian shipping firm. He's invited Piers and I to spend the night in his family's remote holiday home.
Dad? Dad? He's not handsome at all, is he? Hello, how lovely to meet you. Caroline, lovely to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Let's hop straight on. Oh, OK, I'm playing on.
You sure? Thank you. Wow.
Oh, that's taller than I thought. So exciting.
Just in case you were wondering, as I was, Dag is married with 3 children. the city of Kristiansand, the family escape on a 30-minute boat ride to their very own remote paradise island every weekend and throughout the summer.
Doug, tell us how you came to even think about building a house on an island.
As a kid, the parents of a friend of mine, they had a house on an island, so I'm kind of used to it. I enjoyed it a lot as a kid. And when we wanted a place for ourselves, we were looking for a place to have some privacy and enjoy the nature and scenery. And we also wanted a place where that's sheltered from the wind.
I have a sense also that the Norwegians celebrate summer because your winters are so harsh.
Yeah, that's true. We appreciate the good weather and the sun.
We do too.
Yeah. We're with you on that one.
Yeah.
Are we nearly there? Because I'm getting really excited.
It's like 5 more minutes and we are there.
And there it is, look. I love the way the roof is almost like part of the rock. It's so lovely. Colours are great, aren't they?
They are.
It's so discreet.
Really discreet. I really like the way it's hunkered down.
Yeah, you can barely see it, actually. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Doug is leaving us marooned on this island for the next 2 days so that we can find out what it's really like to live in this secluded coastal home.
You sure you don't want to stay this evening, Doug? It seems such a shame. We could open a bottle of wine and have a bit of a fish barbie. Thank you. Sure you don't want to stay, Doug? It seems
Okay,
a
so
shame for you to go.
want to pass you the key and I hope you
Really?
enjoy it.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah.
So we'll see you in, what, 6 months?
Yeah.
Something like
We'll
that.
go native.
That's okay.
When the winter comes,
Yeah.
come and get your keys. Okay, cheers. Bye.
Good. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Right.
You're off.
I've got the keys to this house. Already, I want to come in here and I want to take off my shoes. Not because I have to, just because I want to, because I feel immediately at home here, which is fantastic.
And what a relief to have a building that has such a difference in inside but undercover, and then out here.
Everything's about relating to the rocks, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. These spaces are delightful, and what's interesting is that it's a building that has been designed without an elevation as such. This is just a set of spaces that allow you to be next to the landscape, and I love that, actually.
It feels very special.
It does. But this is still the house. And actually, in England, we think of a house as something that has walls and doors and windows, and you're either inside or outside. But here, this is still the house, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think what's great about this is that this guy has clearly just looked at where the rocks are, where the spaces between the rocks are, and then he's covered bits of that, rather than thinking, what's my house going to look like and where can I plonk it down?
I must get rid of things to make my house. He's actually respected the landscape and built the house to fit in with the landscape. I love it from here, for instance. It's almost imperceptible.
Building a house so close to the water on this protected rocky shoreline meant the architect had to abide by strict planning laws.
The challenge was to create a 4-bedroom home to fit within the 100-square-metre footprint of a 1960s cottage that previously stood on the site. This architect designed a low-lying 1-storey building with an interior floor plan smaller than the size of a tennis court. To maximise the usable floor area, the internal living spaces of the house were split into 2 wings, connected by external corridors. A thick, white concrete canopy stretches over both wings of the house and is bolted into the rocks, securely anchoring the house to this windswept site. Concrete was used as it can withstand the salty coastal atmosphere and weather over time to blend in with the surrounding rocky landscape.
The house and the rock, I mean, they're sort of as one, aren't they, really?
They really are. And even though those bits of timber are very vertical, they still feel like a bit of landscape.
With limited internal floor space, the architect made clever use of the outside space.
This is the bedroom bit. And what's brilliant about this
is that because there is no wall here, this corridor, ostensibly this corridor space, isn't counted in the overall meterage of the house. So you can use that space inside the house where it's needed. And this is open to this beautiful vista. There's one main bedroom downstairs, one here, two here. Yeah, another one. You've got a double bunk bed down the bottom here, and then a single up here. There is a discretion about all these bedrooms. They look the same, but they're not. Because this is the nicest one, and it's mine. You snooze, you lose.
What's extraordinary about this house is that, what you have is a cross-section of a rock formation like this, and many people would level that and put a big building down there. But what this guy has done is just carve this as delicately as possible and then delicately fill in a little bit of that with a bit of a building and leave one bit completely open so that you get views through that. And I think that's a really beautiful way to make a building. And it's a building that doesn't try and compete with landscape. It doesn't apologise for landscape, but at the same time, it's a beautiful, delicate thing that sits there. And really, that's the building.
The man responsible for this coastal home is Sven Lund, an award-winning Norwegian architect based in Oslo.
Tell me what Dag and René's brief to you was initially.
They wanted a house which fitted into landscape. That's our main goal. We had to be very careful. Careful in the way that it was a part of the terrain rather than sticking out.
This is a really harsh climate, and it's also on a remote island. Tell me about building this house.
Exactly when we were building this house, the 2 winters we hit was really, really bad. They were very, very cold.
This looks pretty extreme. This looks like pack ice, sea ice.
Yeah, the island was almost impossible to get to or get away from. And if you see this picture in front of you, it says something about the conditions.
As well as battling one of the worst winters on record, the builders were limited to just 7 hours of daylight.
And they were building in these conditions?
They tried to.
But what about getting materials to this site?
The concrete arrived here on a truck, on a barge.
Really?
It was towed by a boat.
Yeah. How long did it take to build, given the extreme weather?
A bit more than 1.5 years.
It's quite a long time for a house that is about 100 square metres.
Yeah. I think we started at the wrong time of the year, in the winter.
Building through the winter is challenging even in the UK, but Sven was determined to finish the house so that the family could make the most of the precious summer months.
That's pretty good. Oh, look at that.
Even though the water temperature is a chilly 8 degrees, Piers and I can't resist a quick dip while the barbecue heats up.
It's one of the first houses I've been that doesn't just complement the landscape, it actually makes it better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely do.
And how rare is that?
Increasingly, I'm starting to realise that what's important about a good house is the atmosphere, about how it functions. A house like this, the minute you're here, you start to relax and enjoy spending time here. And of course, it doesn't hurt that the scenery is absolutely beautiful, even without Doug.
Piers, come and get this, it's ready!
Not Norwegian, is he?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, look at that.
This house obviously costs a lot of money, but what it gives you is something that's completely priceless, that's beyond style. It's just about this way that we can live in this extraordinary landscape with these rocks right here coming into the house and the sea lapping at the rocks just there. I mean, it's extraordinary.
And it wouldn't do you any harm, would it, to wake up every day to such a beautiful building?
It would do you a lot of good to wake up to such a beautiful building. And in a way, I'm selling the building short because I'm talking about the landscape and the rocks and the light and the water, but actually, it's the building that has judged perfectly how much architecture to do and how little, and where to make a move and where not.
After a peaceful night's sleep, Piers and I are making the most of outdoor living on this remote island.
Usually we're just locked away in a horrible little sealed cubicle away from the elements. But being out here in the elements, it feels like I'm just standing under the most beautiful, warm waterfall out in these rocks. And this is just an everyday experience in this house.
Dashing Dag is tied up with business on the mainland, but his wife, clothes shop owner Renee, is popping by to see how we're getting on.
That's the stylish entrance.
Hi.
Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Caroline.
Lovely to
Hi.
meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Lovely to meet you. Should we sit slightly out of the wind? Because it's quite breezy, isn't it? Oh, it's such a beautiful place. How on earth did you find it?
It was winter and we're just out in the boat. And then when we came around in here to have a look at this place, it was like, I think, January, and it was really cold, but it was totally clear. It was no wind. The water was like completely still.
Even in the winter?
Yes, it was amazing. I think we fell in love with the place immediately.
Any moments when you thought, we've taken on too much? Because it's although it's very discreet, it's quite a big ask, this, isn't it? Not to interfere with the landscape.
No,
Did you
I
knew?
feel very comfortable about the whole process, and the building and everything.
Do you spend a lot of time here?
Yeah, we live here all summer.
So is this an escape for you to come here?
Yeah, it's very, relaxing. It sort of gives you some time off, because both my husband and I work quite a bit, and it just gives you that, quality time with the kids and as a family.
You've actually created something perfect for your family.
Yeah.
Some houses are really good, Caroline, but this one was extraordinary. And I think, well, I don't really want to go, actually.
It's certainly one of the best houses we've seen, isn't it?
Definitely. I think it was extraordinary in that it just felt so much part of this landscape. And I think what surprised me was that when I got here...
I really don't want to go, Piers.
When I got here,
I really don't want to go.
Wasn't so sure, and then as soon as I really experienced it,
Now, where's Dag? Oh, Dag!
I think we should stay.
Our next coastal home takes us to the other side of the world. We're in Marlborough Sounds at the northern tip of New Zealand's South Island.
This ancient waterway was formed when sea levels rose and drowned a series of deep valleys after the last ice age around 10,000 years ago.
The result is an abundance of remote bays and coves, and it was this coastal scenery that inspired the owner of our next house to build a secluded retreat as an escape from his busy working life.
What an incredible thing to build a house at the end of this sea journey.
The challenge for the architect was to design a house which would sit on a narrow strip of land between the shore and protected bushland. The easiest way to access this house is by boat.
It's extraordinary. I'm blown away by how beautiful this is. But the house has to be as good as this boat ride.
It's got a lot to live up to, hasn't it? But it's quite a dramatic entrance, isn't it? Waterfall just there, which you can probably hear all the time, actually. It's just idyllic for me, this. Right in the middle of the forest, right on the water.
Probably the cleanest seawater in the world.
Oh, thank you.
What I love is this sensory experience of being in landscape and not seeing a big house anywhere. There's something very delicate, almost hiding behind these trees.
We could be walking through a garden in the 18th century. Everything's so beautiful and mysterious and scented and voluptuous.
And that's just me.
I like this entrance very much. Do you?
It's lovely being in the trees and looking down at the water. This entire house was built out of recycled, reclaimed hardwoods.
And there they are.
Jarrah, in fact, which is very red and incredibly dense.
Is that the wood that's so hard you can't drill it with a wood drill? You have to use a metal drill.
That's
that
right.
One?
Yeah, iron bark or something they call it.
Oh, brilliant.
What makes me so suspicious of so much contemporary architecture is that the architecture dominates and life is banished. But here, it's the other way round.
It's all about living here, isn't it?
It's all about living.
Living in the beautiful space.
This three-bedroom house has been carefully designed over 2 floors to fit on a narrow strip of land between the hillside and the sea. 2 separate wooden-clad structures divide the house into different zones. One is a living space with a large dining room and kitchen area, with guest rooms below. The other is the master bedroom, which is held aloft by a series of hardwood timbers that give a sense of floating above the trees and water. A glazed bridge corridor through the trees links the main bedroom to the rest of the house.
Water beautiful.
This takes me back about 30 years to when I was a student in Sydney because it's so Antipodean. This bluey green water with a light on it and untouched bushland around it. And for all the abstract pleasures of landscape and place and beauty, actually, this is a really rich and interesting home where someone really lives here.
They do, and with so many beautiful things and with all this wonderful, rich wood. And then, as you say, that peacock blue water.
While the weather's good, I'm going to just explore outside, get my bearings and just see how it all fits together and leave you in here to explore. And there's lots to explore.
It certainly is. I'm going to have a little beak.
Nearly all of the hardwood timbers that support this house are reclaimed, including the ironbark columns which prop up the master bedroom. They were rescued from old railway bridges and transported to this remote location by barge, along with the glass windows and cedar cladding, which nestle this building into the landscape.
I really wanted to come back down to the boat to see the house from where I first arrived, to make sense of it again. Because when you're up close, it's a building that doesn't really tell you how it's organised. Because you're so immersed in just that experience of being in the trees with that incredible view of the water. But from here, it is a very simple building. Constructionally, this house is really just like one of these piers. What there are these uprights, there's some big, chunky bits of timber, and then everything else is a simple bit of beam with some tension wire, and then it's filled in, and really, that's it. What's wonderful about this house is it's very unshowy, very straightforward, and it's done brilliantly.
Once you leave the entertaining space of the kitchen and the dining area, you go to the bedroom via this green corridor. There's glass, and pushing up against the glass is the forest canopy. It's rainforest here. It's like being in a terrarium. Oh, this is one sexy Sexy bathroom. Look at this tub. Oh. I mean, this guy's working life is... To say high-powered doesn't really cover it. He is a world-famous cinematographer. He's worked on some of the best films ever made. I don't know if you know Midnight Express. Ring any bells? Bugsy Malone? Ring any bells? Gravity? Planet of the Apes? Harry Potter? Heard of him at all? This guy shot that. And with all that comes a huge amount of stress. So where better to come and unwind and get back in touch with nature and the real things in life. Wood and greenery and the water.
Piers? Are you there? Hello, love.
I drifted off. I was in a dreamlike state of just sensory bliss.
It is. That's exactly what it's like. It's dreamlike.
What's great about the architecture is that it's taken a back seat. It doesn't disappear completely. There's still a building here. But actually, what the building never does is stop you being immersed in this place, immersed in the dapple light, immersed in that turquoise water. I'm not sure I've ever been somewhere that's so intertwined with nature and that verdant bushland.
It's about living in the moment, this house, isn't it?
Yeah. And it changes. The light changes faster than anywhere I've been as it moves through this canopy. And, of course, the light would have been incredibly important for him as a cinematographer.
Homeowner Michael Sarrazin was closely involved with the design of this house and entrusted local builder David Keeps to execute his precise vision.
I never built a house. I don't have a clue about how to do. You know, film sets is all I know about. I go on there and say, when's it going to be ready? When can I light it? And
but I think your visual sense, I mean, for I know you're kind of making light of it, but actually your visual sense is it's deeply rooted in this property. I mean, the use of light, it delivers. Why did you look for this incredible piece of land in the first place?
I came out once from the States, looked at something which is further out the Sounds, and then I heard about this one, which is 75 acres. The light was nice. It faces north, so we had sun most of the day. I also loved that we could build close to the water. I also loved that we have a waterfall.
Yeah.
So you sort of got it in front of you and behind you, and just stuff fell into place. There was something quite organic, I guess.
Was it fairly... So it was an immediate sort of response to the land and the light, was it?
Yeah.
Michael is dogmatic about beauty. So as the builder, you either say, I'm going to bust my gut to try and interpret what this guy means by beauty. I came to the conclusion that I was better to ignore that. And fortuitously, I think our tastes coalesce somewhat.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
This house is all about reclaimed wood and the use of wood. And actually, I've seen lots of reclaimed things around it.
All the hardwood is recycled. I'm reclaimed.
Do you?
I also like the sort of its age. I thought, why not have the house sort of constructed with old stuff which has some history?
Well, I think that's what... I mean, you get a very real sense of that when you walk in. It is... I mean, it's a contemporary house, but it already has personality and life, and you feel that it's had lots of areas, it had lots and lots of life before.
The thing is, you throw away the spirit level on a job like this. The house is like a work of art. It's like an installation in an art gallery. The workings of the house are secondary to that primary goal of surrounding oneself with beauty.
This aesthetic was extended to the relationship the house has to the natural environment. Preserving the beauty of the landscape that surrounded his waterside home was paramount to Michael. This came with its own problems, especially when David began building the house on this tricky site, so close to the shoreline and surrounded by trees.
The soil here is extremely unstable. All of this area is referred to by local authority as a natural hazard area.
Gosh.
So what we had to do here to support the house was drive railway irons 6 metres into the ground before we could pour any concrete. So we needed to bring in a pile driving rig, and along the way there are a number of old beech trees. So I heroically climb onto the digger with a little pruning saw, up to the top of one of the beech trees and surgically remove a little branch. And then I hear a bellowing scream from the building platform.
Who could that possibly be?
Who could that? It's the client.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
And what I learned, very quickly was that the trees on this site were sacrosanct.
Right.
He wanted to take the stuff out, and I said to him very politely and kindly, for every tree you take down, I cut off a finger. He said, oh, fair enough. So, but look at it now, isn't it incredible? If they'd taken them all down, the house feels settled in the landscape.
Which is just thrilling, and I think that must be about your sense of composition and light and space and all those things.
Yeah. I mean, that's for other people to say. I'm not aware of it because this is how
I'm saying it. It's me. I'm saying it. It's up to me to say it.
I mean, it is a very peaceful place. The only sounds are birdsong, wind, and water. That's it. And I love that. The essence of like naturalness. And I think it's also manifested in the building to a degree. The quality of the light, the quality of the design, the quality of the building, special.
For what it's worth, I think it's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scotty. Feels a bit sad to be leaving.
When we arrived here today, I honestly thought this was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever been. And we were concerned, weren't we, that the house wouldn't live up to the environment. But it has, hasn't it?
It has, because it doesn't try and compete with the environment. It doesn't try and add anything. It just subtly weaves itself into this place, so it's inseparable.
And it's sexy too, Piers. Very, very sexy. Been picked up from airports in taxis before, but never had to go to a jetty. Been picked up by a boat.
He's Piers Taylor, an award-winning architect.
This building is so tactile and just rich materially.
And she's Caroline Quentin, acclaimed actress and passionate property developer.
Oh, I've been expecting you, Mr. Bond.
We've been given the keys to some of the most incredible houses in the world.
It's chock full of surprises, isn't it?
To discover the design innovation, passion and endurance needed to transform architectural vision into an extraordinary home.
This was Hollywood. I'd be snogging you now.
Together, we'll be travelling the globe.
Oh, look down there!
I would, but I'm trying not to kill us.
No, you look ahead.
Meeting the architects and owners who have taken on the challenge of building unconventional homes in demanding locations.
Just another day on the wing of a 747.
Whether it's navigating the logistics of constructing a house on top of a remote mountain.
Why would you build a house where you can only get there by cable car?
Negotiating the ancient trees of a fragile forest.
You never see a building this close to the trees. I mean, that's 6 inches away.
Having a sea view whilst perched on the edge of a dramatic coastal shoreline.
I'd love to know how you actually built this on what appears to be a sort of vertical cliff face.
Or excavating the earth to build a home deep underground.
There is always a moment when you feel fear. Nature is never to come back the same way.
Since earliest times, humans have had a close affinity with the tranquility and isolation of the forest. The joys of living so close to nature is why I chose to build my own family home in the woods. But building in this natural habitat can be fraught with environmental obstacles and technical challenges.
We built the road 3 times. It kept washing away.
It was a long 3 years.
Piers and I will be travelling from the forests of the Catskill Mountains of America.
Usually, if we see this, it's in a building that has cost £150 million.
It's been made like a piece of jewellery.
To the ancient woodlands of Europe and New Zealand.
Discovering what it takes to design, build and live in some of the world's most extraordinary forest homes.
It's a tightrope you walk. It can go spectacularly wrong.
What a beautiful morning.
The first stop on our architectural adventure takes us an hour's drive out of Madrid to an ancient pine forest on the outskirts of the town of San Lorenzo de El Escorial.
Look at the dappled light. This is beautiful. Is it up here somewhere? We're nearly there.
I think it is. We're heading to an unconventional 4-bedroom home where one architect took on the seemingly impossible challenge of building a house which would weave right amongst the trees in the forest without damaging them.
Most people clear the trees from a site before they build.
Yeah.
But this guy kept the trees, allowing the house to weave among them.
So is that why the design's so extreme?
Yeah,
Because they've had to take the trees into account.
It wasn't just a crazy idea about doing some weird shape. It was actually about wanting to preserve the qualities of the trees that existed on the site.
Stop. I think that's it.
I think it is. It could only be it, couldn't it? Check out the fence.
It's quite industrial. It looks a little bit like Ford Open Prison in Sussex.
Does it?
Yeah.
Have you got the buzzer to get us in?
Ooh, yes, I have somewhere here. Hang on, I'm pressing everything. Oh, yes!
There we are.
I love it when that happens.
Richard, the owner of this house, is a publisher and editor of an architectural magazine and wanted his own home to challenge the conventional.
But this is incredible, seeing that so close. I mean, it's almost touching, but not quite. I mean, it's beautiful looking up there. I suspect when the wind blows, this will almost touch the building.
It must do.
And it'll be calculated just so it doesn't quite touch. And underneath here, of course, there'll be foundations that go down between the tree roots.
If you were here and you weren't careful, you'd kill a lot of the very thing you were trying to use. You'd kill the trees.
That's the danger. And of course, then you'd end up with a house that was in a barren piece of land with no trees.
Casa Lavigne is a maze of angular engineering. The floor plan of this contemporary structure cleverly takes its shape from voids left between the trees. Inside, individual zones have been designed like branches, each separately coloured to create a different atmosphere. Outside, the building has been entirely clad in basalt, a type of dark volcanic rock to contrast the colourful interior and reflect the surrounding trees.
I really like buildings that have the same material on the roof as on the walls.
Is it slippy?
No, it's fine.
My experience of basalt is limited. Oh, this is cool.
But what a landscape. I mean, this is brilliant, this landscape.
Look at the trees are literally poking out of there.
Yeah.
It's a bit like being in a nest.
We're cocooned, aren't
I
we?
like it. I really like it.
There is a real respect for nature that's creeping back into architecture in the last 20 years or so. And historically, we didn't really care about nature. We just battered nature into submission. But here, they've looked at the site. They've kept almost all the trees, and then they've just looked at where you can build, and then they filled the gaps. And what, of course, we've ended up with is a building that has come out of the shape of the site rather than an architectural tradition.
I like that. I find that quite exciting.
Externally, the form of this building shows a complete empathy with the forest. But on the inside, the architect has had the freedom to let his imagination run wild.
Bright yellow.
The use of bold colours and industrial materials create a vibrant atmosphere, providing an extraordinary contrast to the serene woodland outside.
And look at the shadows on the floor. I mean, that's beautiful, isn't it?
It's a hell of a colour, actually, and it's a brave choice, but I really like it.
Colour theory has been used to create two distinct atmospheres. Lively oranges and reds to lift your mood, and blues and greens to relax and focus.
But I also like this transparent acrylic, and I love the way the toys become quite decorative. This is quite quirky, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm not quite sure. So jury's out for me a little bit on this. What is it? A poly or a
This is
plastic
acrylic,
or
yeah.
acrylic,
It's a type of plastic, but it's an acrylic. I love the low-tech nature of it. It's pretty cheap and quite easy to fix. And this metal here, I mean, that stainless steel that wraps around is really beautiful. This riot of material and colour, I think, is really refreshing.
And then into this beautiful blue space. And then these flashes, the lime green perspex here. It's quite exciting, this use of colour, isn't it?
Really exciting.
Stimulating.
Every element of this house pushes the boundaries of a domestic dwelling. Even the kitchen is wrapped in industrial stainless steel.
Can I ask you something? Where do you stand on a stainless steel kitchen? Don't say on the surface, but I mean, do you like them or do you not like them?
I think they're great. They're really practical. I love things that can be the same colour all the way around.
Some people would say it's a little bit too like a hospital.
It means that the kitchen is part of the architecture. It isn't something that's just been stuck in the corner, and it makes it less kitchen-like.
What do you mean? Because most of us, our kitchens, well, they are by their very nature kitchen-y.
If it was made out of something and there was just a standard set of units in the corner, it would be a bit of a letdown.
Is your kitchen kitchen-y?
It doesn't have conventional units. It just has a big island that everyone cooks at.
If a man's going to have an island, I'm surprised it's you, because it's very suburban, an island.
So social. It's so social. Don't you quote that suburban thing at me. It's so social. Listen, I'm going to go and make you something. Oh, hello, Caroline. I can't see you anymore. It's really antisocial. I hate cooking, looking at a suburban bit of stainless steel. What I want to do is be in the view and talk to people and actually experience the space. I think kitchens are about the space and the poetry of cooking. They're not about the units.
If it were me, my life would be all about the birds here. I'd have a pair of binoculars permanently there. I'd spend my whole life just watching nature.
And I'd spend my whole time just marvelling at the spatial sequence and how wonderful it is and just basking in the sheer delight of it all.
Oh, you can't help it. Chop off his head, it says architect right the way through the middle.
This unusual house began with a very unusual brief for architect Eduardo Arroyo. Tell me how it came about, this project.
So one day the client, Richard, arrives in the office and said, I want a house to change my life.
That's pretty powerful, isn't it? A pretty powerful statement.
Scary at the same time.
And when you came here, what did you think of the site initially?
Well, it was quite shocking because it was completely packed with trees. Most of them are 100, 200 years old. So my first response was, well, it's impossible to build anything here.
But Eduardo and his team weren't going to be defeated by the plot of land and embraced the challenge of building a home in what most architects would consider an unworkable location. Show me some early sketches that show the evolution of the house. I'm really interested in that.
One of my favorites, in a way, is the one we did the first day we were in the site. We did a very strict and precise work of measuring all the trees, the distances, the thickness of the trees. And once we had that very precise technical plan to activate some very rough and intuitive ideas of how to use this forest.
How did that feel as the form was beginning to emerge?
The forest was guiding us. It was guiding how the forest let ourselves occupy it. To me, it's very exciting to build things that haven't been built before.
Coming back to this house, how do you feel walking around it?
I normally don't like to come back to my buildings. I think once you have finished your work, then I release myself. So it feels very good to see that even if there are some changes and life has developed inside, absorbing what is happening inside, not getting destroyed by it, which means that the building is very strong.
This house is all about the trees, and what that means is that when Eduardo first came here, what he did was work out exactly where the trees were. And what it enabled Eduardo to do was to strike a line around the buildable volume. And there, very naturally, can you see the shape of this house, which sits beautifully in the space left over by the trees. With that, what Eduardo was then left with was the problem of how to build next to a tree. And this house is built right up to the trees. Typically, you need to be way outside the tree canopy because that's where the roots are. And often, you know, if you have a tree trunk like that, the tree roots will spider out from that to about the same distance as the canopy spreads. What Eduardo did was to work out that he could put these micro piles, little piles down between the tree roots. Typically what they do, they're rammed into the ground or driven into the ground. So what you have is a building built off these very delicate fingers of steel that go down between the roots. Trees are really vulnerable to being disturbed, and if you sever roots, trees will die. So this is the only way you can build on a site like this. just as the forest has dictated the unusual shape of this house, it's also heavily influenced the interior living spaces.
From here, I really feel like I'm floating in this canopy. The sheer poetry of being in the trees with all this light bouncing around and all these brilliant surfaces reflecting that light, that's really magical.
I think this is the perfect place to sit because I can hear the wind rustling through the pines and the birds' song.
It's great the way this house doesn't have conventional rooms and conventional doors. It just has spaces that you can use in beautiful and inventive ways.
And just if I really listen carefully, I can just about hear peers banging on about suburbia and conventional living and how dull it is to have sinks in the kitchen and beds in bedrooms.
Often people think that houses like this are difficult to live in, difficult to really occupy in an informal way. But this is a child's bedroom that is full of life. And I love the way these pictures sit alongside something that's really high architecture. What's fantastic about this house, Caroline, is that it's so poetic. It's all about the experience of being in the trees, in this extraordinary landscape.
Nature's been respected, the trees are exactly where they were, and the house just flows around the trees. It's wonderful for that. But for my taste, it's a little conventional.
The last leg of our forest adventure takes us further afield. We've flown halfway around the world to New Zealand's North Island.
We're about half an hour outside Auckland.
45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, if we were in London, we'd be sort of Croydon now.
And we're right on the edge of the world.
We're heading to the village of Piha on the west coast, home to the protected Waitakere Ranges heritage area.
This is ancient virgin bushland, and you had to be so careful when you build here.
We're off to see an extraordinary home, built on a plot of land covered in the native Pahutakawa tree. The owners wanted a 3-bedroom house that could function both indoors and out.
The architect's biggest challenge was to find a way of bringing the forest right into the house, whilst having to navigate strict conservation laws.
This house that we're going to is called Under Pahukatawa, and I think they had to clear as few trees from the site as possible and then nestle the house in among the trees.
I like that sort of challenge offered to architects. I think it's really important to say, no, you can't just have a clear site. You have to work with what's here, and nature comes first and the building comes second. Oh, Piers, slow down.
Are we here?
I think that's it. It's here.
Here we are. Wow. Is there a house there at all?
Mostly you can see trees.
And that must be a Pahukatawa tree.
Shall we have a look? Oh, look. Oh, it's like an enchanted forest in here.
I love this. I love the sense of ducking down under these beautiful branches.
There's something about coming into these gnarled, sort of very textured, almost like arms, like coming in to be embraced by the arms of the Pahutakawa trees.
A lot of people would want to be by the sea or in the mountains with the view, but I'd like to be in the forest, and this feels like coming home.
To make way for a house in this indigenous woodland, the planners agreed to the removal of 4 Pahutakawa trees. A 2-storey open-plan living and dining area nestles into the site. Placed to the rear and side of the house, 2 wooden-clad towers create private areas for bedrooms and bathrooms. The entire building is enclosed by a large glass roof, which is supported by steel and timber struts, mimicking the branches of the surrounding trees.
The texture of this bark set against the textures of that cladding, it's wonderful, isn't it?
And the cladding is a little bit like the bark in that it has real depth. It's got bits of timber in 3 different layers.
Yeah, no, it has actually, hasn't it?
Often contemporary buildings are really flat, but this feels textured, layered and rich. And I love the way you can see through the building to the canopy the other side.
Because this house just sort of snuggles into the trees.
It does, it really does.
Snuggle it up. And then so these aren't, they're like trees, aren't they?
They are called structural trees, which is really a way of supporting a roof. So when it goes up to the sky, you're not looking at huge bits of structure, but you're looking at delicate limbs. So I think we need to find our way in.
I know, but it's hard to leave these trees, isn't it?
Inside, the textures, tones and colours of this house are inspired by the trees that surround it.
Wow. I love this.
It's quite special, actually.
It's really special.
It is. It is
really
special.
The glass roof and walls make the house seem almost transparent, allowing the surrounding forest to be viewed from every direction.
Check out this, Caroline. Look at this beautiful view back into the forest here. How exotic is that?
And again, you're in the trees again.
Totally in the trees.
I love the fact that everything has a slightly sort of filigree notion to it, so you can see through everything. It's great from here, actually.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, I love
Seeing
that.
through the lampshade, through the structural trees, through the actual trees,
through the roof to the sky to the real trees. And I'm in love with this cladding.
It's great, isn't it?
I've not seen anything quite like it. I really like this.
I
It's
wonder
one of
what
those
these
holes
holes
for.
Don't
What is
know.
that? That looks like a
Ventilation
speaker.
holes
Is that a speaker?
Maybe it is. Maybe it's... Look, look at that.
You've broken it.
There's the TV and everything.
Oh, very cool.
This is just plywood with bits of timber stuck on.
So that's quite an inexpensive way to do it, isn't it?
Totally.
And because they've used different widths, it looks expensive and interesting and architectural and sculptural, doesn't it?
What's lovely is that it doesn't act as a block for your eye because it has depth and your eye keeps travelling, a little bit like the canopy again.
Yeah.
And the building gets much more delicate as it goes up, like trees, and then it completely dematerialises against the sky, which is lovely. So it feels like we're immersed in canopy all the time.
Do you think this all opens up here?
Yeah, it does. These doors will all stack down there. Do you think we should have a go at opening it all up and actually getting the full experience?
I do.
So just the structure is remaining?
In fact, we would just have kind of the trunks of the building.
Here we are. Get your fingers out of the way.
Yeah.
OK, I'm going all the way down.
Great.
Beautiful bits of glass, haven't they?
Massive. This is what we use on stage when we move trucks on and off stage.
Yeah.
You have a track in the floor to take bits of scenery on and off in exactly the same way.
I love buildings that move, or bits of buildings that move.
Do it more. We don't do enough of this, do we? You can muck about and change it in a bit like a magic box or something.
Yeah. I think by law, all houses should have to do this.
Look, this suddenly creates a really good space, doesn't it?
What's wonderful is that I don't know whether I'm inside or outside now. I'm just in a beautiful environment.
Why don't architects do this more often? Because I think this is one of the most valuable things that architects could be doing for us, really.
People will tell you that we don't have the climate for it in the UK, but actually we do, because this isn't a warm day. This is 12, 13 degrees, but because it faces the right way and it's protected from the cold winds, it makes it a really usable space.
Because people want to be outside.
But historically, they didn't. Historically, we were fearful of natural landscapes, particularly quite wild landscapes like this. So we retreated in and then we looked at it through a pair of doors or a little pair of windows.
The owners of this house, Gary and Sherry, are property developers from Auckland. Challenged with building on a plot covered with Pahutakawa trees, they enlisted award-winning architects Lance and Nicola Herbst to navigate the sacred trees and design their perfect holiday home.
What was your brief to them? What were you after?
Our brief was not a lot, actually. We wanted light, good indoor-outdoor flow, because we love the outside a lot.
Yeah.
3 bedrooms, and that was about it, really. We had no concept of what sort of look we wanted.
And what was the first thing that they gave to you? What was the first drawing like?
It was this.
It was this already?
Yes, it was.
Pretty much,
yeah. When we saw it...
they were nervous, we were nervous.
We were nervous. I saw dollar signs in front of my eyes, thinking, this is going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we took it away for 2 to 3 weeks, and we moulded over.
Did you make any changes to those initial drawings?
No.
Well, it captured exactly what we wanted. We didn't know what we wanted until we saw it. When we saw it, we thought, yeah, that's what we want.
We did put our utmost trust into the architects and believe in them and their work and what they were capable of.
They've got a skill that you don't have, and they can see things that we can't see. So we thought, well, let them go for it. And I think the design that the architects came up with made it easier to get through the council for consent.
Because they're really strict, aren't they? They have preservation orders on all the trees, don't they?
Very strict.
Yeah.
When the trees came out, we had to have our arborist on site. Council had an arborist on site to make sure that they took out exactly just these 4 and that nothing else was damaged.
Once the trees had been carefully removed, the house took 15 months to construct. Gary acted as project manager, keeping the workers on schedule and their budget on track.
I was here every day.
Worked alongside the builder.
I was a catch it and fetch it.
Were you?
Fetch it man.
All the labouring work.
All the labouring stuff that the others didn't want to do.
So do you know every inch of this building?
Every little bit of it, yeah.
Do you love the house?
We do.
Very much.
Yeah.
How close is it to your dream house?
Oh, for me, I think it's there.
But we're not looking for anything else. Probably feet first out of here.
Gary has told me that there is more to this place than meets the eye. Apparently, there are some secret spaces to discover.
I don't know what this bit is. It's like a sort of, I don't know, reading area, or there's somewhere to lie down and sleep for guests or something down there. What it does give you is a brilliant view of both sets of trees, the real trees and the architectural trees, which look wonderful from up here. And it gives you a very, very nice view of Piers Taylor. What do you think this is up here?
It's anything you want it to be, and isn't that great? Because rooms, you know, that's so 20th century, so 19th century. It's a beautiful space to do whatever you want, and, critically, look at the trees.
You see, I'm going to translate for those of us at home that aren't architects. It means it's a little corridor we didn't know what to do with. It's a waste of space, unlike anybody else here. There's something kind of wonderful about the... Oh,
Where have you gone? You still alive?
I found a secret door. There's a bedroom behind me.
You're lucky you didn't fall down a big hole.
It's a very, very nice bedroom. Quite woody, but very simple because it's not about being inside. Because this place is all about the trees. I can hear the sea. I can smell the trees. There's nothing there. I think that's really brilliant.
Many people think of buildings in terms of what shape they are and what colour they are, but this house is so much about transparency and breaking down the mass of the building. If you cut a section through this house, a solid bedroom block like this, and a series of decks that move up and down to get you into the house. But in theory, these bedroom pods would be a very big block. So what this architect has cleverly done is provide a solid roof there, then a transparent roof, and then he's held up that transparent roof on these series of structural trees that allow you to see right the way through the house. And I think what happens ultimately is that you forget the building's there and you really feel like you're in the canopy.
To dig further into the challenges this house presented, I'm meeting one half of the architect duo, Lance Herbst.
This is an extraordinary site. Tell me what it was like for you first coming here.
So coming to the site was one of those things. You looked at the site and it was essentially 99% covered in a mature Pahudakawa forest. Then your first feeling is, we're never going to get a consent for this. It was one of those that was so difficult that the only way that we knew we'd be able to even get a consent was to come in with something very poetic.
And your first diagram for a building that nestled under these trees, what was that?
It was trees, yeah. It was one of those. It's an old, I mean, it's not a brand new way of thinking. Like, throughout the history of modernism, there have been people that have tried to do buildings that are that kind of reference to trees. So it literally was a case of, OK, we've got to have a go at this. And, I mean, as you know, as an architect, it's a tightrope you walk. It can go spectacularly wrong.
Building on this site involved sacrificing 4 ancient Pahutakawa trees and fueled a passionate response from the architects.
We just felt that we needed to do something that was a kind of a memory of the trees that we'd cut down. So we started using a number of metaphors inside of that tree language. You'll notice that these, even those are very much our tree structures, they're also very geometrically rigorous. It's an element which is neither man-made nor neither organic.
Because, of course, when you try and mimic a tree, it looks ridiculous. But here, there's a tautness and a crispness.
The branches and trunks of these load-bearing structural trees not only support the glass roof, but also have to withstand the rigours of New Zealand's seismic terrain.
In New Zealand, we have it's a country of earthquakes, so we have a seismic code. So this structure needs to resist forces that actually aren't present until they happen. So structurally, there are massive, steel beams going through the roof and tying back into that roof to give the building resistance in the event of an earthquake.
Architects design and build a lot of buildings in their careers, but only a few are really special. Tell me whether this building is one of those for you.
Oh, yes. This one will be hard to beat. It was one of those moments where everything came together. Gary and Sherry aren't clients, they're patrons, and it's a completely different approach that someone takes when they set about to make a building that is a piece of art compared to making shelter.
When we arrived, just being here amongst these trees, I knew it was going to be special. I don't think I realised quite how special it was going to be.
A building like this happens maybe 3 or 4 times in an architect's career, and this reminds me why I became an architect. You're always looking for this opportunity that is so rare, when everything comes together. Perfect site, perfect client, perfect brief.
It's perfection in the Pahutakawas.
Next time, Piers and I will be exploring some of the most extraordinary coastal homes in the world.
Oh, it's so beautiful!
To discover how architects have overcome the challenges of building incredible homes by the water.
This is the pile that's stopping the whole house tipping into the sea.
Up next on BBC Two, the letter N is for the new QI, and also nattering about noodles. Sandy Toksvig with guests including Matt Lucas and Jerry Springer.
I think it's time, Caroline, to go and see how the other half live.
Talk about welcome to my humble abode. Cool. That is a whole lot of house.
He's Piers Taylor, an award-winning architect.
I mean, the depth of this wall, it's 4 foot thick.
After you, my lord.
And she's Caroline Quentin, acclaimed actress and passionate property developer.
This house has the perfect ratio of bedrooms to swimming pools.
We've been given the keys to some of the most incredible houses in the world.
If we were left alone here for any amount of time, I have a feeling
We would ruin this house.
To discover the design innovation, passion and endurance needed to transform architectural vision into an extraordinary home.
Look, I'm dumbstruck.
We're travelling the globe.
Meeting architects and owners to explore how their daring homes respond uniquely to local landscape, climate and culture.
I think this is probably the greatest house I've ever been in.
Whether it's battling the elements to construct a dream home on dramatic Scandinavian terrain.
The architect was nervous that things would go wrong. He couldn't bear to look at it.
Pushing the boundaries of European experimentation.
I think that's it.
I think it is. When I looked at the proposal, in the beginning I was almost shocked.
Celebrating craftsmanship and beauty in Asia.
We've likened this house to dripping chocolate sauce over vanilla ice cream.
Or going all out for glamour in America.
You just do what you do best, is to create a masterpiece.
Piers, is this too Miami?
In our search for the world's most extraordinary homes, we've come to the USA and headed straight for the Sunshine State.
Give me a word that describes Miami, Florida.
Heat.
Sunshine.
Water.
Money.
I've got to say it.
Glamour.
But we're looking for more than a bit of bling.
I feel like I'm in a painting.
We've been given the keys to 4 Florida homes, and in a place with a celebrated architectural heritage, we'll discover how some of the world's greatest architects can deliver the glitz.
So, this is my quiet Miami.
With high-end design.
This is a house that opens up like no house I've ever seen.
We'll explore how Florida's modernist history is now influencing a new generation of architects.
It's the perfect house for this part of the world.
Large or small, there's no doubt we're in the right place to see how high culture mixes with popular culture, to see houses opulent and down to earth.
It's extraordinarily beautiful and very, very enticing.
Our first home overlooks Indian Creek and the Atlantic Ocean. Built on a waterfront plot, the locals refer to as prime real estate.
What's curious about these houses is that they're quite traditional houses. I mean, they're quite ordinary architecturally.
I haven't seen anything that's kind of really out there.
Where's the flamboyance?
Exactly, something sort of cutting edge.
I think the question then is, if you can do anything you want,
what do you do with all those dollars?
What you do is aim high and seek out an exceptional architect. Canal House is the result of a developer willing to value design more than cost-cutting to create a remarkable waterside house.
And it's time to go and see how the other half live.
Rooted in an understanding of traditional modernism, there's also something cinematic about its main elevation.
If you've got $30 million to spare, you could buy this place. But does that sort of price tag guarantee you good design?
Core. It's a big place. Oh, I like what I can see through there.
There's another world through there.
The facade does make a big impact, but what really sets this house apart is how just as much attention has been paid to what's behind. Where the designers have created an informal tropical garden with soft curves and rich planting around a natural swimming pool.
You're sort of almost in nature, even though we're very much in the city. And a sun trap. I mean, it's incredibly bright here. Anything?
I think that's the bedrooms here. So all of this will open up, and out you come in the morning and swim in your natural pool.
How lovely. It's got fish in it too.
I'm not sure I'd really fancy a dip in there, but it's a picture to look at.
And this looks like an ancient, decaying dinosaur spine.
This snaking walkway is the primary entrance to the house. Coming from the street, you're swept up over the garden towards the main living spaces, which are concealed behind a striking perforated wall.
Presumably, that is all living space up there, front to back, and we can see through it. And this is one big shade on the west side, because the sun will set here, the afternoon sun is the really hot sun. What's nice here is that instead of it just being a blank wall, it has texture.
And also that shaded area underneath must be lovely when it gets hot, which it really does here in Miami, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This is the Sunshine State.
This house has to deal with the heat of the tropics, as well as providing a range of living spaces with completely contrasting qualities. Intimate and private, open and extrovert. But in essence, it's quite simple. 2 stacked rectangular blocks set at right angles. The 60-metre-long ground floor contains all the private spaces, 4 bedrooms that open onto the garden, a living room and a master bedroom, as well as a garage. The block above contains the main public spaces, a kitchen and a massive 21-metre-long entertaining room. Enclosing the garden is a huge multi-purpose exhibition space or sports hall, and for a dramatic entrance, the curved walkway rises above the garden to the front door.
It's even bigger when you get inside than it looks from the outside.
Do you know why that is?
No.
I think it's the proportion of these pieces of teak that are only 3/4 of an inch wide that wrap up all the way over the top and down. They're very, very small in a very big space, so it exaggerates the sense of space. Plus, there's no structure in that entire opening. And that's a big span. There's nothing that brings it down to a domestic scale.
It feels like a film set where, you know, you could easily have 30 extras in here playing, I don't know, people from...
Scarface.
From Scarface, yeah. Something really glamorous and dramatic. Oh. Shall we?
Yeah.
Gorgeous kitchen.
With its 7-metre-long island, it's certainly impressive. But will it ever be used?
I don't think people in Miami had kitchens. I thought they just sent out for everything.
I don't think it's ever going to see a chopping board.
Ooh, I tell a lie.
So this is a box within a box, I guess. Never look at how it's made. Yes, it is a box within a box, which is curious because it gives it a sense of scale, but it's also people that have a sense of scale within this space, because as the person diminishes, you'll find that the space increases.
That's brilliant! How did you do that? It's so good. I've never seen anyone do it better than that. Oh, it's really stairs! It's good, isn't it?
Oh,
Come
you
on,
do.
you come round, come
Right,
here, and I'll
watch you
do
do it. Go on then.
Okay. I'm just going to go down to the cellar.
Look at you.
Do you think this is actually an architect's joke? Do you think they've done this on purpose?
Yeah, I'm sure. This whole house, in terms of how you move through it, is a piece of theatre. That's been set up to do that.
Very pleasing.
It's a real piece of theatre, but it is, or at least will be, someone's home. And exploring downstairs, I want to know how it feels to live in.
There's such a sparse palette of materials in this house. On the interior, everything is either white, stone, or timber. But instead of being some sort of punishment, some world of denial, it's actually incredibly rich and interesting. I think for two reasons. The first is that natural light comes in through these screens into the bedrooms in a really beautiful way. The other reason is that all of these bedrooms are connected to nature. And however beautiful materials are, they're never as beautiful as natural light and nature.
The 5 ground floor bedrooms are linked by a 30-metre-long corridor.
This place is huge. I need roller skates to get from one end to the other.
There's a large private living room, which compared to upstairs is relatively snug. The main bedroom is enormous. And the bath is pretty impressive too. Canal House has been built to cater for your average superstar's daily needs. It's the work of Brazilian Marcio Kogan. Formerly a film director, now one of the world's top 100 architects, his characteristic rectilinear designs are recognised around the world.
Convincing such a renowned and busy architect to accept this project took some persuasion from developer Barry Brodsky.
What was your brief to Marcio? What did you ask him to do?
Well, asking an architect like that to come to Miami to do a specific home is a lot to ask. And we kind of negotiated budgets and details and ability to give freedom, creative freedom to him in order to entice him to come down and do this. But the way he describes things and the romance and the beauty that he conveys to you, it's all of a sudden you just fall under a spell and you start following his vision.
Making something as complex as this would have been impossible on a small budget. There's been considerable expense, from ordering over 1,700 hardwood pieces for the bridge to getting bespoke masonry for the facade.
Marcio loves this and he designed this, and to get this artistic brick was very difficult. As you can see, it looks seamless like one piece, but all this stuff has to be done by hand and leveled. But the masons here it was incredibly difficult to do. But everything is about a moment for Marcio.
It's interesting to see how the architect's earlier life in film has influenced the design. This front elevation has a very particular ratio.
Marcio explained to me, and this is like the way movies are shot, they're very horizontal. So everything was set to create a very cinematic feel when you sat inside looking outside to the ocean. It was an enormous engineering challenge. The span is almost 70 feet across without a column, and most people thought it couldn't be done, so that was another big financial commitment. So there's been a lot of those pills to swallow, but in all fairness, I agree to doing that as part of embracing his creativity.
It's rare for a developer to encourage design and not budget to lead decisions. But Barry's willingness to spend the extra dollar extended to the outdoor spaces too. He commissioned renowned landscape designer, the superbly named Raymond Jungles, to create the garden.
I think this garden has a huge sense of energy.
Well, I would say that probably everything's in harmony here. There's a really good sense of proportion and scale with the spaces. There's a really good yin-yang relationship between the architecture and the garden. And I think that's the energy that you feel. It's good, positive energy. There's nothing jarring. And I do think the architecture creates wonderful spaces and beautiful drama in the garden.
The use of water is exceptional here. Was that an important element for you?
Well, I'll have to say, like Luis Barragan always said, water's the heart and soul of a garden. So once again, that was part of the genius of Marcio's concept, was a bridge over the water through the garden and to the architecture. It's this processional movement through gardens, because gardens really are more about movement than they are about a fixed perspective.
It's fabulous, but what this place really needs is someone to live here. And Barry's not short of superstar house hunters.
Swizz Beatz and Alicia Keys, I was here with them a couple of weeks ago. Drake was just here. Vera Wang.
You're not tempted to move in?
I am at times, yes. Every time I come here, I never want to leave.
In supporting a renowned architect to work with creative freedom, Barry has elevated something that could have been a simple piece of commercial real estate into a piece of high architecture. And I think that Melissa and Jacob have certainly earned the right to enjoy the fruits of their labor. There are very few buildings this good that are both designed and built by the same architects. On the ground, there are these two enormous concrete ground beams, and what they serve to do is to move the entire house out of really what was once a swamp. And buildings here are out of the ground because the ground is boggy and wet. But on top of those ground beams are then these large I-beams that are the largest that you can transport on a public highway here in Florida. And so there's a parallel between the depth of the house and how the material got here, which I think is really lovely. But I think what's fantastic about the house is the making of it was the real passion, the real joy from Melissa and Jacob, who made this building with their own hands. Brillhart House is in some ways an homage to the idea of an American modernist home. Regardless of who built it, it's also extraordinary for its purity and apparent simplicity. This subtle, modest and beautiful home that is delicately placed in this lush landscape is my kind of paradise.
Our next house is another modernist-inspired home. It's 4 hours north of Miami, up the freeway to Sarasota. And there's plenty to see on the way.
She's quite tropical.
I'm sorry, but there's an osprey there with a fish. Can you see it?
Yes, look at it.
Oh
There.
my God, oh my God!
That's mind-blowing.
Oh my God. Oh, that was one of the great moments of my life.
Focus, Caroline, focus. We're looking for a house owned by a couple who retired to Sarasota and wanted to build something different. In a conservative neighbourhood with traditional houses, this home has courted controversy despite having roots in an architectural style that is now widely accepted.
I want to know about modernism.
Well, modernism is forward-looking and, you know, stripped buildings of decoration, and there was this idea that buildings, in a way, could be more like machines for living in.
That's the house, that's the house.
You know what we could do?
This is it, this is it.
And you couldn't really miss it. Spencer House certainly stands out as striking, with razor-sharp lines, crisp shadows and stark white walls, unapologetic against the blue Florida sky.
We've been invited to explore before the owners meet us.
Right, I am going for a swim.
Once your eyes have adjusted to the sheer expanse of white, the first thing to notice is the graphic precision of the walls and the grid of small square openings that puncture the entrance courtyard and the rest of the house with light.
What a beautiful place to come into. I feel like I'm in a painting, but I don't think I could be anywhere else in the world but Florida. These white walls, this blue sky. This type of modernism makes perfect sense here because it works.
Set on this prominent corner plot, the architect's challenge was to build a home that, whilst filled with light, would also be private.
The entrance courtyard leads straight into an open-plan, double-height living, dining and kitchen area. Adjacent is a covered courtyard and pool around which there are 3 bedrooms and a pantry. Through the centre of the building is a tower that contains a mezzanine sitting room. And above is a glass-walled studio with surrounding terraces. Capping it all is an outside bar on the roof. With its almost monumental exterior, it's possible to see how this place may have raised a few eyebrows. But inside, it's much softer.
Wow, I'm right in. I mean, there's no sense of a hallway and those traditional European spaces that buffer you from the street. It's just so informal right away.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Look what I found.
You found the informality.
It's completely informal. It's fantastic. I walked off the street and into the pool without stopping. It's extraordinary. I know a lot of it's got to do with the climate, and of course it's much easier when you have the bluest of blue skies. But there's something really kind of relaxing about not having those sort of little tucked-off rooms where there's secrecy and quiet times. Actually here, everyone's sort of living the same moment of their lives at the same time.
That's why a lot of people yearn to live in big, open spaces, because you can see everybody all the time. You know what everyone's doing.
What I really love about the view from here, Piers, is those little glass windows. They're sort of almost church-like, aren't they?
And actually it feels quite church-like, because churches, of course, historically had lots of small windows that brought light in from above, and you never had a direct view out, because, of course, you were always referred to an internal landscape. And this has that similar quality. It's a beautiful quality of light.
Be quiet.
In fact, oh, I'm just talking to myself.
Some homes were just meant to be enjoyed.
There's one thing better than coming off a hot street straight into a swimming pool. It's coming out of a swimming pool straight into a guest bedroom with an ensuite bathroom. Oh, this is nice, look. Sort of prehistoric fossils as bathroom tiles. It's all to do with the water and the sea and nature. And a lovely shower. The fish carry on swimming through here. And then an outdoor shower too.
2/3 of the house is on the ground floor and has everything you could need for living. Upstairs are more private spaces to escape to. On the mezzanine, a living room, and above that, a glass studio where the owner builds model ships. What's really noticeable is that as you rise through the central tower, views become more open as privacy becomes less of an issue. These wonderful apertures are a key aspect of Spencer House's architecture.
The pioneering owners are Beth and Gary Spencer.
Did you decide, I want a modern sort of statement piece of architecture?
We sort of zeroed in on the modern by going to open houses. So we would do that on weekends, and we sort of gravitated to these wonderful modern homes, and the more we saw, the more we zeroed in on a couple of Sarasota's better-known architects.
We interviewed them both, and Guy was the best communicator and the best listener.
Yeah.
So we selected Guy.
You drive by here any day of the week.
Their architect was the award-winning Guy Peterson, whose work is heavily influenced by a form of modernism that grew out of Sarasota.
Sarasota has a rich architectural history, doesn't it?
It does. Sarasota was on the map nationally for doing these amazing modernist buildings in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It was later dubbed the Sarasota School of Architecture as a movement.
Did you feel sort of kindred spirits? Did you have the same ideas? I mean, what did you ask him for?
Wow, we didn't really ask him for anything. We sat down and gave him a list of all the homes we'd lived in, right? All the features we liked about them, all the features we didn't like about them.
His big challenge was I needed privacy and Beth needed light.
They wanted a lot of natural light, but they realized they're on a busy corner. So how do you conceal yet reveal at the same time? And so really the strategy of this house is more about openings vertically to the sky and bringing light in from above, and then very controlled openings to the exterior. These openings became a way of maintaining the privacy and not having big shafts of light come in, but controlled openings that allow light to just funnel into this big open space.
There are more than 200 small squares that let light into the house and the courtyards.
And for you, the light was really important.
Very important, but part of the appeal was the lot faces south, so it gets a lot of really great sun. So those squares in that wall let the south sun in.
And then at night, it emits light and has a whole different persona.
Guy may have overcome the architectural challenges, but in taking down a traditional house to replace it with something so overtly contemporary, Gary and Beth were opening up a whole different can of worms.
Well, when it was first being under construction, a lot of people didn't know what to make of it.
And it was interesting because then the press got a hold of it, and it became kind of a unsanctioned beauty contest. Do you like it or do you not like it?
But as we worked our way through construction and they could see it finally get painted and get close to finish, it became very well received.
When you do something that's different, people are always going to ask the question, why? And why is it not looking like the house across the street? But I've always told my students, I've always said, I'd rather do a building someone didn't like than a building they didn't notice.
What's it like to live here?
Oh, it's like being in your own resort.
Seriously?
Yeah, every day is just a joy.
Every day?
Yeah, every day there's a new favorite thing.
And if he's happy, I'm happy.
Personal touches fill this home with joy, but never distract from the architecture.
I love this shadow box. I mean, this isn't the thickness of the wall. This is a bay window that projects. And what it does is...
Hang on. This isn't the thickness of the wall, it's a bay window that projects.
Yeah, so the wall is only that thick. The wall, this isn't the thickness of the wall. The wall is this thick. This is a lip, a great big lip that comes out.
Oh, yes, I can feel it.
It's a big frame. And what it does is cast a shadow on the wall. I mean, it brings texture and relief to this composition.
What do you think about this colour?
I love this colour. It's the colour of the sky in Florida. It's called Bouzian blue. And it goes really well with this pink.
I know.
Le Corbusier, who created this shade of blue, was the founding father of modernism, and it's another nod to this home's architectural roots. It's a style that is often perceived as hard-edged, even austere. But with their architect, Gary and Beth have achieved a softened and more inviting take on it.
Oh, you're up here?
Great, great. You managed to get some bins.
I did.
Fantastic. Oh, you'll be able to
Found
see them now. Look, up there, a pair of ospreys. They're so beautiful. Look at her. Oh, there they go.
Our final stop is back in Miami. And we couldn't leave without paying a visit to probably the world's most famous beachfront. Lined with Art Deco hotels and homes to the likes of Naomi Campbell and P. Diddy, South Beach is a poser's paradise. And our final home is moments away.
Hang on, this is it.
It's very private. You sure we're welcome here?
Confronted by an expanse of solid concrete, Prairie residence may seem to the passer-by like an impenetrable fortress. It's certainly a house that does little to give away its secrets.
Piers, it's on stilts. It's like a giant concrete treehouse.
This has just been dropped into the city.
Climbing the bronze and steel staircase into the belly of this home, it's difficult to anticipate what we might find.
Wow, I've come in from the city and all the hubbub and bustle. And I feel like I'm in Sri Lanka, not the centre of South Beach, Miami. I'm transported from all that noise, cars, congestion into what feels like some kind of walkway in a tree canopy. But also, I'm not really sure what's outside and what's inside. This is a house that opens up like no house I've ever seen.
This ambiguity, the blurring between interior and exterior, only works for real where temperatures consistently hover between 20 and 30 degrees.
But it's so cinematic. I mean, the light coming through those trees and bouncing off this water, it's kind of mesmeric.
The pool is not only used to reflect light into the open house, but also for its cooling presence, using the overflow to create a striking wall of water below.
Oh, this is brilliant. To complete that sort of jungle theme, we've got a waterfall here. This wonderful curtain of water just coming down this beautiful rock. This is such an exciting way to enter a property. It's extraordinarily beautiful and very, very enticing.
This home makes no apology for its opulence. It's a truly sensual place.
The architect's vision was to create an escape from the craziness of one of the world's busiest seafronts. His solution was to build an inward-facing home on stilts, consisting of a series of 3 separate buildings around a central courtyard and pool. The 2 smaller ones are self-contained bedroom suites with double-height ceilings and mezzanine floors. The largest building contains the main living room, kitchen and main bedroom. A lush green roof adds to the richness of the surrounding tree canopy and to the rich, sensual textures in every surface and every material.
I mean, if you are feeling overstimulated, this is a room to come and de-stimulate yourself in, isn't it?
Do you mean by having a lie down or something?
Yeah, I do. It's exactly what I mean.
Oh, I've got it first. The attention to detail is extraordinary. I mean, there's 3 different sorts of concrete in here. The ceiling is different from the walls, which are different from the floor.
It shows such love and affection for all the things he's used to build the house.
I mean, there's something about the way it's been crafted that is very special. I mean, everywhere we look, there's real skill, care, and joy, and passion.
This home is a showcase of high-end design. It takes someone who relishes perfection to commission work like this. The owner is Hanny Boutros, who uses the place as an escape from his day job, running a pharmaceutical company.
I actually I fell in love with Miami over a decade ago. For the simple reason it reminded me so much of home. I Lebanon. I was born and raised in Lebanon, so we grew up on the Mediterranean, of course, and the water. And to add the crazy nightlife, you know, Miami, it's the same thing like Beirut. So every time I come here, it's like I'm home.
It's one half. What's through this half?
This is my hideaway.
Ooh,
yes.
exciting.
And then here you go, after you.
Thank you very much. Huge door.
So, this is my quiet Miami.
Your quiet Miami.
Yes. I lay there, I look at this, and I'm like, life is good.
Because it's quite frenetic as a city, isn't it?
But here you feel like you're completely removed. Like you can get away from that crazy, good crazy, and then you come home to this. You know, just a relaxing moment, quiet moment.
There is something almost cathedral-like in this bedroom, and its really high ceilings and the play of light on the solid materials create a reverential feeling. The man Hani asked to design his home was architect René Gonzalez, an old friend of 13 years who shared his passion for design.
I wanted to create a place where he can come and decompress and really feel tranquil. And when I thought about this project, I thought that I wanted it to have this monastic feel, to have this feel of a retreat. So the ceilings and the walls never touch. They always are separated by skylights that bring light down into the living spaces and create these spaces that go on forever.
This move to raise everything up off the ground into the tree canopy, is that about an experience of landscape or a more pragmatic concern?
You know, the early American settlers raised their houses on stilts for the same reason we have to today, to address environmental issues. In Miami in particular, sea level rise is a major issue. And I think for architects, it's a responsibility that we need to embrace and be the creative leaders to address.
But it feels that you've woven some pavilions among some existing trees. Was that the case, or have you made all of this?
You know, we had this wonderful banyan tree here when we started.
So this was a virgin site?
It was a completely open site with nothing other than this one tree. And the rest we brought in. We were really interested in creating a condition where water, the landscape, and the house would really be interlaced in a seamless way, where you could really flow from inside to outside and feel like you were in the trees.
This house brilliantly shows that you don't need lots of different materials to create a diverse range of textures.
As you notice from the house, the color palettes, the materials, I'm very keen on earthy in the feel and the touch, and I love
The textures
Yes.
are second to
Yes.
none.
Yes.
I mean,
and
the bronze of the staircase, which is exactly the same colour as your eyes, by the way, is smooth and sensual. Then you've got this, which is kind of rippled, and I've never seen that done with marble before. The overriding sense here is that there is nothing left to chance. Everything has been thought about.
It was combining an architect that is, and excuse the word, the choice of words, I mean, a detail freak. And then you add to that a client that obsessed with detail. And then you trust your architect that they gonna design something that fits your personality and allow them to be as creative as they want to. This is what happened. You know, I didn't come in with a set of rules. I just came up with a space that I would like to live in. And then you just do what you do best, is to create a masterpiece.
It may be the most important house I ever designed because it was really developed with an enormous amount of intensity and really love.
This house has everything. It has flamboyance with a precision and a craft and a care that you never see married to this theatre. And this house moves me enormously and moves on my own thinking about the power of architecture.
Florida has shown us some inspiring houses.
From marvellous sharp-edged modernism to the sheer indulgence of waterfront living, and the refined modesty of the simple homage to the glass pavilion. Whether it's this place or maybe the heat of the night, together they do strange things to a person.
Hey, Pierce! Is this too Miami?
What are you doing? You're not going swimming, are you? It's a reflection pool. You reflect. You don't swim in it.
Oh, don't be such an architect.
Such an actress. Our next house takes us to the other side of the world and to a country famous for its rugged mountain scenery. We've landed in the South Island of New Zealand and are heading to a home nestled in the wilderness, half an hour's drive from the nearest town of Wanaka.
All my life, whenever people have spoken about the South Island, they talk about it as sort of a bucket list place, one of the most beautiful places in the world, and it is.
It's extraordinary, the clouds on the top of the mountains.
And so little building, Piers, that's what I'm noticing.
Nothing.
This area of outstanding natural beauty is fiercely protected by New Zealand planning laws. So much so that any opportunities to build here are extremely rare. But 12 years ago, when a plot of land came up for sale, homeowners Mark and Susanna jumped at the chance to fulfill their dream of living in this remote mountain range.
But the hurdle of securing the land was only half the battle. They had to find an architect who would embrace the challenge of designing them a home that will be camouflaged within the surroundings.
It's a lot to ask of an architect, isn't it? To say, look, I've been in love with this thing for my whole life. This has been a dream for me. And then to say to them, now create the perfect house for this environment that I adore.
But if it can't do that, then no one should be building. People shouldn't be littering little houses in beautiful landscapes. They really should be understanding how precious this is. This landscape is so fragile. Once you've spoilt it, it's gone for good.
And we're here. Wonderful, isn't it?
It's quite a subtle little thing, isn't it? Nestled down here.
Which I'm pleased about, because I was, rather dreading it might be something big and ostentatious, but it isn't. That roof absolutely follows the line of the mountains. It's rather lovely, isn't it? It almost disappears, doesn't it?
Taking on the challenge of designing a building to fit within the landscape, the architects took inspiration from the triangulated geometry reflected by the mountains. They combined that with the unusual sculptural forms found in origami to create this truly unique structure.
I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hunkered down, all kind of blends in, doesn't it?
The architects carefully selected building materials with colours and textures which would disguise the house within its environment. The wooden cedar cladding and concrete window frames were inspired by the surrounding trees and mountains to create a weathered camouflage.
I mean, really beautiful. Some of the nicest cladding I've seen, actually.
So not too much glass then? That was a stipulation.
Not too much glass, no metal. And the timber goes on the roof as well here. So it is a very low-lying building that probably is semi-invisible from the distance.
I imagine it's almost completely invisible. I mean, it really does. It's camouflaged absolutely into the landscape. Right, here we are through the church door. This reminds me of Liverpool Cathedral, this door.
Inside, you truly get a sense that you're wrapped in a three-dimensional origami structure. There are unconventional angles almost everywhere you look. As well as creating a beautiful internal space, there's a real purpose to this innovative design. The angled roof juts out of the ceiling, allowing light to enter the building in a variety of ways.
Look at this.
Look at the sun now. Here I am right at the furthest point in the house from the light, and the sun is flooding in across the cedar. Look at it, it's beautiful.
It changes it.
It does.
A lot, actually, not even subtly. The room changes quite dramatically, doesn't it, because of the sunlight? It's incredible.
And it's lovely looking through into different spaces. And that cutout upstairs.
That's amazing.
It's great.
I don't think there's any glass there either.
No.
I think that is just another portal, another way in.
But actually, you know what that's really about? That is about getting that view when you're upstairs.
That's some view, isn't it, Piers?
It is. This is my favourite type of building that has daylight from the back, sunlight from the back, and view that way. And I really do feel protected from the drama and the weather by this big cutout. This is a very cleverly constructed home, built to protect its occupants from the blistering heat in the summer and howling snowstorms in the winter. It's no wonder this house is christened the Cloak, or to give it its Maori name, Teikitaka.
I mean, I can see why this guy fell in love with this exact piece of land, because you don't come across views like that more than once in a lifetime. So you would remember it, you would fall in love with it, and you would want to come back and stay and raise a family here, which is what he's done. It is somewhere that, once seen, it would never be forgotten. I'll never forget it. The piece is lovely.
Here we are, love.
Oh, God, shattered. Thank you. Thanks.
While Caroline takes in the mountain air, I want to examine how this house pulls off the difficult trick of bringing in light without relying on huge amounts of window space. This is an extraordinary site, but in many ways it's quite a tricky site because the view is there and the sun is there. And in this climate, you need the daytime sun. So the section is the thing that tells you all about this building. And what the section here is really just two beautiful pavilions, one sitting above the other. The problem with that is that the bedroom one is shielding the living one. So all these architects have done is pick up a bit of roof like this. And what that does is allow the sunlight to enter right the way into the heart of the house. And what they've done at the view side is then make a shaded veranda, really, to allow you to always see the view. And that shows that architecture isn't about making strange shapes or trying to think of a concept. It's just looking really hard at the view and the daylight and then making sense of it with a building.
This house gives up more and more of itself as you delve into it. The internal use of concrete throughout creates a cave-like and remarkably cosy feel.
This is a lovely room. It's like a little sort of den, study or something, little family room. More of this lovely concrete. I love the way you can see how the concrete was formed in the planks of wood. Still see the shape of it here, and it looks just great with the mountains.
This cedar staircase takes you up to the two master bedrooms, both with spectacular mountain views.
There's no question that is the most beautiful view, but for me, one of the most exciting things about this house is the story of it. Mark saw this land as a young man, and he's stuck with that dream, and he's managed to build his house, his dream house, right here, looking at the view he's always adored. And that must be the definition of a dream home, your dream come true.
The two architects who designed this house are based in Auckland on the North Island.
Hi, guys. Hey.
Gary Lawson and Nicholas Stevens are award-winning architects.
How did you deal with the responsibility of building in this extraordinary place?
I remember when we first came to the site, we actually came out on a boat. We were looking up and we saw this gorgeous landscape, which reminded us of almost like fabric raked over rocks. In that, we saw an idea for the house. You know, in the mountains, you see triangles. You don't see perpendicular angles. You don't see verticals and horizontals. So we wanted to architecturalize that kind of idea, and through origami is how we came to that.
And the interior particularly feels like the most exquisite bit of furniture, which is crafted beautifully out of extraordinary materials. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we wanted to create this sensation of being a little bit like being in a cave. We took the whole faceted geometry of the rocks around and we sort of created an architecturalized version, especially around the fireplaces. Each of those fireplaces was cast in a precast yard in one piece.
By going to a precast yard, we could ensure that the product would be top notch and then transport it to site.
But transporting these huge concrete precast elements to such a remote location presented its own problems. Poor roads and bad winter weather caused huge delays. Gary and Nicholas employed a small team of builders who were willing to work in such an inaccessible location. Consequently, the house took 3 years to complete, but the level of craftsmanship that these builders brought to it is second to none.
In New Zealand, there is a real resourcefulness amongst builders, and there is that sort of, it's a bit of a cliche, but there is a sort of a can-do Kiwi attitude to making stuff. And look, this builder would never have made a building exactly like this, and he cared so much.
I think for the last 150 years or so, we've really struggled to know how to build beautiful buildings in landscape. I think this building is a really good model in terms of how to do it. It's a complex building, but actually it does some very simple things. It makes a series of spaces that are beautifully lit with fantastic atmospheres. I do love these materials, though. I mean, they're beautiful. This rock, look at it.
Only an architect would call grass materials.
The last leg of our architectural mountain discovery takes us a little closer to home. Piers and I are in the Swiss Alps and heading towards Mount Rigi, where two architects took on the challenge of building a holiday home perched on the side of a mountain. Soaring at 1,665 metres above sea level, this house takes in breathtaking views, but has to withstand some of the harshest winter weather Mother Nature can throw at it.
And I'm quite excited about how we're getting there. You know something? This is a first for me. I've never been in a cable car before.
Because you hate heights.
Because I've never wanted to go in a cable car before.
You might love it.
I won't love it.
I will.
I don't know.
Ja, is goed. Ga zwaaien.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, that's the thing I don't like, so I don't go on photograph.
I love this.
Why would you build a house up a mountain where you can only get there by cable car?
There's a sense of being away, being apart, being in nature that is really exaggerated when you can only get there by cable car or, you know, a really sort of inaccessible way.
This was going to be the greatest view ever. There's absolutely nothing. It's like someone smeared duck fat all over the windows.
Made it! Here we are. Hasn't got any better, the rain, has it?
This is just the beginning of our mountain journey, Piers.
Have you got some Kendal mint cake?
Of course I have. What sort of woman do you take me for? I've got Kendal mint cake and lipstick. And that's all a woman needs up a mountain.
It doesn't take us long to reach the remote mountain village. The house we're heading to is a contemporary take on the traditional chocolate box chalets which sprinkle this area.
This bespoke holiday home is owned by 4 friends who shared the cost of building on this steep mountainside slope.
Luckily, 2 of the owners are architects and embrace the challenge of building in this remote location, where the closest town is a 15-minute cable car ride down the mountain.
What are
your first impressions, Piers?
I like it. It looks well made, well detailed, and really easy to use.
While deceptively simple from the outside, this innovative house was designed with real purpose. Its unique hexagonal shape creates the stability needed to cope with strong winds. A two-story prefabricated wooden structure sits on top of a deep concrete foundation. A chimney with a steel core runs right through the center of the building, anchoring it to the mountain and distributing heat throughout the house. The living areas and 4 bedrooms are uniquely shaped to fit into the 6-sided structure.
This is the front gate. There we are, Piers.
I love this.
Good man.
Watch the
Thank
string.
you.
That's
Yeah,
electric.
the cows aren't allowed in, but we are.
I think that's the best gate I've ever seen.
We're going the right way, Piers.
Yeah. I mean, this is a building that you need to be able to batten down the hatches of.
It's an antidote as well to sort of the frilly umpire houses all around it
Yeah,
as well,
I think
isn't
so.
it?
Yeah. Here we are.
It smells nice. It smells woody.
It does.
And it is warm.
This wood is so beautiful. I mean, the lovely golden light you get, even on a grey day.
I suppose that's the real proof of a good building, is can it look wonderful even when the weather is dismal?
And it can.
And it does.
What a great space.
Like it. Like it.
What a beautiful space. I mean, that light is beautiful. You know, I think it's almost better that it's misty.
Oh, it's lovely.
I do feel like I've been bathed in this sort of honey-coloured glow.
These prefabricated plywood walls are a clever touch. They're not only cost-effective, but also enhance the light in every room throughout the house.
It's very, very warm, very relaxing. It smells, that smell of the wood is so lovely, and I can imagine the smell of a wood fire.
You know, as an architect, there's very few houses I can actually even bear to be in because I either feel claustrophobic or I feel oppressed, but actually this is a beautiful house to be in.
The simple combination of wood and concrete throughout this space helps give the house a unique atmosphere.
There's often a sense that to make something good, it has to be complex. But this house is just a really good, well-structured space made out of something beautiful, and that's about it.
I see the wood theme continues. I've never been in a room with as much wood in as this, unless there's actually been some burning coals in the corner and I've been sitting in a towel, because it is like a sauna. But it works here, and I don't know why it works. Maybe it's to do with the light, maybe it's to do with the size of the spaces. You know, you're very aware when you're walking round that this is sort of ideal for where it is. This just works a dream because the light bounces off all the different angles and it's beautiful.
This angular aesthetic continues on the outside. The 6-sided irregular shape creates a clever optical illusion to make it seem smaller than its 242 square metres.
I think if you stumbled upon this building in the mist, you might think it was a Swiss mountain hut, and it looks tiny. And I know it's a cliche to talk about buildings as sculptural, but this one really is, because as you move around it, more and more of it is revealed to you, and from every angle, it's completely different. And now, along the side, we can see its really beautiful shape.
The only thing that's missing from this house so far is the view. So I've come up with a challenge for my architect friend.
Piers, I think we should have a little drawing competition to see who can most accurately predict what the view really is.
You're going to find some brilliant way of doing it, aren't you? With just a single ballpoint pen and a bit of actorly charm.
Yes, I am. So get over it. Ready, set, go. 1 minute left, Piers.
All right.
done.
So what's amazing is we have drawn the same thing. We have drawn the same thing, basically.
I think mine's better than yours.
I think this window is set up architecturally. That's what I'm trying to show.
OK, you've got a very jealous nature. It's just a better drawing. Get over it. Mighty.
This is an intimate-sized space there, and all there is you and the view.
Piers, there's a bit of view coming. Can you see it?
I can, just down there.
Just breaking, just breaking.
That's extraordinary.
Can you believe it? After all this, now the view is revealing itself to us.
I'm glad it's now, because we've loved the house already, and now we can actually see why it was built.
Do you think we would have loved the house as much if we'd seen this when we started?
Yeah.
I do as well.
And now, spread before us. That's amazing. That's like a Japanese watercolour, isn't it? It's fantastic.
It is like some special effects thing that Hollywood's putting on for us.
Yeah.
Still think it looks more like my picture than yours, though.
Nonsense. Nonsense.
So competitive. Even about nature.
Owners and architects Andreas and Gabrielle created their mountain holiday home as a place to retreat to, high above the clouds.
The Rigi actually is like an island, the mountain.
Yeah.
The fog is like a lake, you know, like a sea, and it's like you would live on the sea.
Sometimes people stay under the fog for weeks, you know, and up here it's beautiful weather.
We came up in a cable car. How on earth did you get this house up a mountain?
In Switzerland, it's usual to build in such places with the helicopter. So we decided to make a prefab house. When you prefabricate the house, they do this prefabrication earlier. And then in one day, they bring this whole element, the whole wall is one element, with the helicopter here. The house was done in one day, actually, the main house.
One day?
One day.
Although this irregular-shaped house is a departure from the traditional chalets around it, Gabrielle and Andreas designed this structure to withstand the harsh winter weather.
You can get really strong wind from here, and when you have only one wall, then it's quite difficult to stabilize the whole wall. When you make it like this, you know, then it's stable. And that was also a reason to do that. It stabilized the whole house.
Stiffens it. Yeah.
Actually, the locals were very impressed about our entrance because it's very well protected.
In wintertime, the wind comes here and blows all snow away. Even the way is always clean.
Is it? The
grass?
grass?
Because of the wind.
But that's the reality, dealing with weather. If you get that right, everything else is secondary.
Do you ever find it hard when you have guests to come and stay? Is it ever hard to get rid of them?
It is,
yeah.
Actually, because everyone loves the place and they don't want to leave. It's exactly like that. Yes. There is no better place, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to have you here.
Very much indeed. Thank you so much.
I've learnt a lot today. I've learnt a lot about you, in a way, because I've learnt a lot about architecture, and I've learnt it's not about rooms, it's not about spaces, it's not even about where the windows are or what the surfaces are like. It's how a place feels. It's about atmosphere.
And that, really, more than anything, is what we all strive for. Everything else is secondary to that one thing, atmosphere.
Next time, Piers and I will be exploring some of the most extraordinary forest homes in the world.
You never see a building this close to the trees. I mean, that's 6 inches away.
To discover how architects have overcome the challenges of building homes in these fragile habitats.
It's a tightrope you walk, it can go spectacularly wrong.
think it's time, Caroline, to go and see how the other half live.
Talk about welcome to my humble abode. Cool. That is a whole lot of house.
He's Piers Taylor, an award-winning architect.
I mean, the depth of this wall, it's 4 foot thick.
After you, my lord.
And she's Caroline Quentin, acclaimed actress and passionate property developer.
This house has the perfect ratio of bedrooms to swimming pools.
We've been given the keys to some of the most incredible houses in the world.
If we were left alone here for any amount of time, I have a feeling
We would ruin this house.
To discover the design innovation, passion and endurance needed to transform architectural vision into an extraordinary home.
Look, I'm dumbstruck.
We're travelling the globe.
Meeting architects and owners to explore how their daring homes respond uniquely to local landscape, climate and culture.
I think this is probably the greatest house I've ever been in.
Whether it's battling the elements to construct a dream home on dramatic Scandinavian terrain.
The architect was nervous that things would go wrong. He couldn't bear to look at it.
Pushing the boundaries of European experimentation.
I think that's it.
I think it is. When I looked at the proposal, in the beginning I was almost shocked.
Celebrating craftsmanship and beauty in Asia.
We've likened this house to dripping chocolate sauce over vanilla ice cream.
Or going all out for glamour in America.
You just do what you do best, is to create a masterpiece.
Piers, is this too Miami?
We're in Portugal, on the southwestern edge of Europe, a country of stunning landscapes and a wild, rugged Atlantic coastline.
You've been to Portugal before?
I've never been to Portugal before.
It's beautiful.
I'm fascinated to discover more about Portugal. I've heard that there is real design ambition here and an exhibitionism below the surface.
They're beautiful little settlements. I mean, I love the modesty of them all, you know. Nothing has been designed to be looked at, has it?
No.
We're hitting the road to find Portugal's hidden architectural treasures. Risking life and limb.
You know.
It's opening.
Exploring some of Portugal's most exciting homes.
It works for a space, and it leads you to what must be the main event, this extraordinary view.
Where architects have been let loose.
1, 2, 3, go! First one to touch the end!
No! To create phenomenal properties that respond sympathetically to their setting.
This is without doubt one of the biggest privileges of my life, to be in a house like this.
We're starting in a beautiful and windswept region west of Lisbon, known as the Portuguese Riviera.
And tucked away somewhere in this exclusive seaside neighbourhood is a discreet and beautiful modern home.
You got the address there?
Yeah, I think it says it's on the left here somewhere.
It says we're here.
Oh. That's not at all what I expected.
It's not that one, Caroline. I think it's this one.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
I like that from the street, this house gives little away. But beyond the drawbridge, there's a complex and sophisticated three-dimensional puzzle. First, we need to work out how to get in.
Haven't you got the key?
Oh, no, here it is, sorry. Okay, oh, okay. So it's really, hang on. That's very chic, isn't it? A moving hedge.
What are you doing?
Sorry!
Caroline?
No, sorry, I pressed the wrong button. What? I don't
Squashed
know.
like a bug in there.
Sorry. Mine's opened.
Everything's opening now.
Oh, God, I didn't know I'd done.
I think you're going to press a button now and this is going to come out like a drawbridge, isn't it? And throw me off the top.
Yeah.
Caroline Quentin in charge of a remote control. That's not a good thing. It's very tactile, very beautiful, and very grand.
This stunning family villa is a masterclass in understated beauty. Light and shade dance bewitchingly through the minimalist, stylish interior.
The architects have created a kind of 21st century castle with walls of concrete, glass and timber which all move at the touch of a button. The moving walls mean that this is a house that works with the landscape as well as the highly changeable weather.
It's 8 foot wide and 8 foot high, and I can operate it with a single finger. Of course, a house like this wouldn't have a front door with a conventional, latch, etc. And at first glance, it's difficult to tell what's inside and what's outside.
Gosh, this is good. It's a breathtaking room.
I've just seen a golf buggy go past. That's hilarious. It's got the most amazing view in the world, and then there's a load of people with sun visors on zooming past.
Because Portugal is one of the golf capitals of the world.
Why would you build what is clearly one of the most beautiful houses in the world on the 7th tee or whatever?
Because I guess they're incredibly keen golfers. That whole wall opens up, I think, which means that you can swing your bat. You could kick off from here, couldn't you?
You could kick off, bless you.
What do you do?
I think they tee off. And again, look, Pete, you could just open this up. And then you've got a swimming pool in your sitting room.
But this house has many other interesting surprises.
Oh.
This is the room, isn't it?
So that's a second swimming pool?
That's the second swimming pool on the roof.
The courtyard is designed to keep out the strong winds that come in from the Atlantic, but is also where the combination of light and water is used in a very architectural way.
It's so glamorous, Piers, isn't it?
It's lovely, but it also is a very sensible way of making a space in a hot climate, because in summer you can cross-vent all of this and use it, you're in the shade. But in winter, you can use this to have lunch, to hang around. It's great.
Inside Wall House's heavy exterior shell is a family home. Above a basement with guest bedrooms, a garage and a recreation room are the main living spaces. An open-plan kitchen and sitting room are arranged around the enclosed courtyard and pool. Above are 3 family bedrooms, bathrooms and a series of balconies, all overlooking a transparent swimming pool. This creates a canopy for the courtyard below, providing a beautiful quality of light.
And that the light from the pool is beautiful coming through the shade, I guess.
Dappled over your dining area.
It's a really usable, contained courtyard in the middle of the house. And this house has lots of glamour, lots of style. As a palette of materials here, blue sky, grey concrete, blue pool, grey timber. It's a really good palette.
I absolutely love it. It looks like you can open these up, and when it's a hot day, just really take advantage of that wonderful breeze.
Why don't you press that button, Caroline? Which button? It's just on the wall there.
The landscape is welcomed into the house through an enormous expanse of glass that makes up the entire side elevation of the house. It's operated using a simple counterweight system.
This is a fully automated house, and major walls can move and disappear depending on the prevailing weather conditions.
Most houses have doors and windows that open, but this house has walls that move, big pieces of wall that move in different configurations, and they're made of timber, concrete, glass, and all of those things together provide a range of different spaces. It's really unusual, actually. Here, what's lovely is that the wall is a device that I guess there's like a castle would have used a wall historically as the device to enclose.
Yeah.
21st century fortress.
If it were a fortress, this house wouldn't be a bad place to be under siege, with a state-of-the-art kitchen, a games and cinema room.
This is an enormous house. The second pool, the upstairs pool, which is absolutely stunningly beautiful. Bedroom. And, oh, I appear to be in the bathroom. Oh, I am in the bathroom. Can't be a bathroom without a door. Tiny little door. And if you want to, you can watch the golfers from the third swimming pool. Master bedroom, I fancy. Lovely place to sit outside the bedroom. Look down on both pools. And relax, if I must.
And what could be better after a rest than a bracing swim in mid-air? What are you doing, Taylor?
Mad. This house is called Wall House for good reason. The wall defines the buildable limits of the plot. So outside of the wall sits, the sort of unguarded, landscape. That is the landscape, and whistling in comes that cold Atlantic wind, and the wall contains and stops that wind from entering. So within the wall, the question is, how do you get in? And there is a bridge. I mean, it's like an ancient drawbridge that brings you up to the front door and into the house. This house is interesting in how it manages to make a virtue out of its exposed position near the Atlantic, by containing a set of protected spaces where light and water are used poetically. I'm meeting the architects who designed this house, Marco and José. Tell me what you think the essential component of the design is.
The light. We did a house for the weather, and today it's a very good day.
Sunny, windy.
Sunny, windy.
And the way the light works is very beautiful. It's particularly unusual here, though, because it's constantly moving because of the pool on the roof. And that was presumably a big design decision early on, to place the pool on the roof.
On the first floor, because we want to create a cover to the heating exterior area, but we don't want to lose the light. So we thought to create some liquid element that let light inside the patio.
The pool has huge pieces of glass. How was that engineered and built?
The bottom
it's not glass.
It's not glass?
It's acrylic.
Acrylic?
It's acrylic, okay. It's acrylic.
Creating a transparent pool was a big challenge. 4 huge acrylic panels 13 centimetres thick in steel frames weighing 8 tons each had to be craned over the top of the house. Once carefully lowered into position, they were sealed with special silicone to make them watertight. The pool contains 55 tons of water, yet because it's unsupported on 2 sides, it looks weightless. This effect is created by a counterweight in the ground and hefty steelwork in the supporting wall. This is a building where you see every single bit of construction. You've got nowhere to hide if anything goes wrong.
Of course. We use the structure like a Finnish house. We don't cover the structure. It's part of the architecture in this case.
Sometimes doing this, it's easy to take for granted that you see some of the most brilliant places, but this is without doubt one of the biggest privileges of my life, to be in a house like this. Everywhere you turn, there's something beautiful, something fun, something interesting, something challenging. It's a real treat. Hi, Piers.
Hello.
What are you up to?
I'm really struck by this house as a sort of mini citadel in some ways.
Yeah.
It has a bounding fortress-like wall that keeps the outside out. In a way, it is another world in here.
It's interesting, the house, isn't it? Because everywhere you look when you first arrive is closed off. But now that we've started to open up all the sides of the house, the walls of the house, it becomes an entirely different living space. My idea of heaven is to have a pool directly off the bedroom. I think if you're going to build a luxury house, and this is, let's face it, a luxury house, then for me that's what it's all about.
We're visiting a house that has dealt with these challenges in an original way.
Here, the soil seems to be so sandy and dry.
This piece of land here gets very windy. I mean, it's very exposed to the Atlantic. This isn't Mediterranean country, this is Atlantic country.
It's here, yeah. Unprepossessing gate, quite like that. It's scrubland, isn't it? They've built in sort of pine scrub.
That's quite nice, though.
Oh, I can see it. I can see it.
This house has been built on a huge 61-acre site for a free-spirited financier and his family.
I'm interested that it doesn't give much away, does it? Really is nestled, isn't it, into the dunes.
Casa Monte, or Dune House, as it's affectionately known, has 2 artificial sand dunes that buttress the sides of the building and lead up onto the roof.
I like the fact that the path becomes the house. I like the ability to be able to survey the surrounding area very quickly.
But it's also where we can understand what the house is. And actually, the house is, in a way, quite simple. It's an X, it's a cross, and there are 2 little internal courtyards.
It's lovely, isn't it? I mean, it's you get a real sense of place because we're quite high now, and you can see into the forest.
When viewed from above, the unusual shape of this building becomes apparent. The illusion is of a modest house, half hidden beneath man-made sand dunes that conceal its true size. It's a fascinating building, a stylish secret den, nestling within a pine forest.
This is the front.
I always like what I call, in an old-fashioned sort of 1930s way, a storm porch.
But also, I love this really raw, crude concrete. I mean, this is their vernacular. This is what they do around here. And we are outside again.
We are. We're not underground at all. I thought it would be dark. I thought we were coming into an underground bunker. But it's beautifully light, and you can have a view wherever you look.
This is the lightest bit of the house in the middle. And I get now why the legs are pulled apart, because you can see right out into landscape.
In plan, Dune House is a large, crooked cross shape buried beneath man-made sand dunes. The first leg contains garaging and a guest apartment. 2 more truncated legs provide 4 family bedrooms and bathrooms, each leading onto protected terraces. An open-plan living and dining room that look into the garden and pool are in the 4th leg, with the kitchen alongside. It's an ingenious shape which creates several intimate areas, each one with a different relationship to the landscape beyond.
A big living space. This is the other leg. It's a big space.
And this curved wall is unusual, and I guess that's because this leg has then been pulled away from the other limb to give you a big courtyard inside. And of course, this roof, the ceiling, slopes right the way down to, about 5 foot.
I like the fact that you can use it in different ways, because when it's cold and windy, you'd close off these windows. You sort of go to the other end, the sort of lower ceiling and the more cottage-like end of the room, light a fire.
Person-sized space down there.
Exactly, short person-sized space down there. And yet, obviously, when it's warm,
open it up and you're just at the poolside all day.
But also in winter, what's great is the sun will flood in, hit this floor. That floor will absorb all that heat, re-radiate it at night, so you can bask down the end there in the knowledge that you've gained all that heat for free, actually.
Free heat, I like that.
The architect has created a house that can cope with an extremely variable climate.
He's used shutters to reduce summer glare and orientated most of the windows south to increase solar gain in winter.
And he's topped it off with a cruciform roof. X marks the spot.
What I hadn't appreciated when I was on the roof is that this whole roof surface is a hyperbolic paraboloid. It's a flat plane that is twisted, so it's a double curvature. It's always curving in 2 dimensions. And of course you can do that with concrete.
Not only is this house a hyperbolic paraboloid, but there's also loads of shiny concrete.
They've made everything out of it. They made the bed, the bedside table. It's very clever, that one material that binds this house together.
It's everywhere, even in here. And I like it very much for use in a bathroom. It's so easy to keep clean. Stiff brush, damp cloth, job done.
The key trick of this building is that the house has been pulled apart, been massaged into an almost starfish-like shape. But what you gain in doing that is a building that has landscape sitting around it, and that landscape can thread right the way into the heart of this house. Critically, then, the whole house is only ever, wherever it is, only 1 room deep. So every single room, wherever it is in the building, has a view both ways. And that is really special.
This unusual light-filled home is definitely a one-off. And owner Andre is going to give me the lowdown on its creation.
I mean, it feels to me like you've sort of said, make somewhere easy to live.
We did say that, and mostly we wanted it to be very, very simple. The materials are very basic. We don't have a lot of furniture, we don't have paintings, because we really wanted very, 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 very simple.
But the actual design, when he first showed you, the design, a bird's eye view of the house, that's not simple. How did you cope with that?
It was very unusual.
Yeah.
And I remember the first impression I got, it looked like some letter from some unknown alphabet. Which
yeah, it is like
because
that.
It has, but it made a lot of sense, to be honest, and it was not very difficult to buy into the idea.
The idea came from Lisbon-based architect Luis Pereira Miguel. He's passionate about building houses that respond to the natural environment.
As you start designing the house, it was clear that we would have to do something that had to take advantage of the sand. So, as you can see, this is completely made out of sand. It was very important to build the dunes to get this connection.
This is a house that really is a piece of landscape, isn't it? It's embedded in the ground.
It is completely. I think it's much influenced in land art more than in architecture.
Louis used 120 tons of sand relocated from the site to create the dunes. As sand is difficult to build on, the groundworks alone took 2 months. Perhaps the trickiest part was the roof, as its complex geometry had to be set out in timber formwork before it could be cast in concrete.
So now, a few years on, how do you feel coming back now and seeing this in this landscape?
I find the house still beautiful, which is good, I think. And another thing about this house is that you cannot really say that this is a house from the 80s or from the 90s. And I'm very happy to be here after those years and to see that the house still is impeccable.
It is a house built on a piece of land meant for building, but it still feels very like nature is boss here.
Yes.
What do you love most about spending time here?
I love everything. You know, I love that it's a house that we enjoy with friends. We enjoy a summer life here, and it's a house where my children were born and grew. So it's got a lot of very emotional memories. You know, we like being completely with no neighbors inside. That privacy is wonderful. And yes, we love this this landscape.
Our final destination is in Portugal's far north, a place famous for its natural beauty. It's a popular region for hikers and holidaymakers. Due to the altitude in this region of Portugal, the architects were asked to produce a property that would cope with cold weather and also take advantage of the beautiful woodland landscape.
I don't think we can be far away now.
A steep valley side facing north, I think.
Is that it?
Do you see it?
I can see something. Right.
Here we are.
Excellent.
Casa Jerez is hidden, built on a hillside. The road leads to the rear, and in order to fully appreciate the house, we need to walk all of the way around it before we go in.
I really like the idea of not revealing anything at all as you arrive. It's a good way to meet a house, isn't it, Piers?
I think we should just see what we can discover.
A natural stream running down the valley has been diverted and transformed into a series of pools.
I really think it's extraordinarily beautiful, and I love the way it's sort of just another part of your journey around this house, and we've only just started.
The house is like a large cabin perched on the mountainside. The platform is made from concrete, with the building above a much more lightweight combination of steel, timber and glass, with framed views out into the woodland.
Our first real glimpse of the house, and the scale of it is phenomenal.
It's really lovely the way the concrete embeds the house in the ground. And then there's this very lightweight timber wrapping over the top. It's a lovely way these two bits of the building have come together. It's really monolithic, and I have to confess I have a love of buildings that don't have small domestic openings, but have big planes of material.
Already, we've been here a few minutes, and there's so much going on. It's terribly powerful.
It is. I mean, what a great entrance shaft, and there's no other word for it.
There's something really wonderful about the simplicity of it, because you know by now there's going to be a real treat when you reach the bottom. After you, my lord.
Thank you.
The long concrete steps are very theatrical, concealing the view until it's revealed to you from inside. The house is anchored into both the hillside behind it and the bedrock below. At one end is a 5-metre-high bedroom area, separated from the main house by a small courtyard, and inside, the bedrooms and bathrooms are accessed from a mezzanine which overlooks the double-height living space below.
Oh, what a great room. I mean, this is a huge space.
It's much bigger. I mean, I knew it was going to be quite a big room, but this is enormous, isn't it?
It reminds me of a saying my old tutor used to use, which was every house should have a room where a child can get up to speed.
What about an adult getting up to speed?
I don't know, should we give it a go?
Yeah, go on.
All right. Yeah, you have to go.
I'll start here. Yeah,
all right.
But
1, 2, 3, go! First one to touch the end!
No!
You had to be tagged. Now!
This space is designed to work as both an intimate family room and a place to entertain larger gatherings.
I like the idea of being able to move where your sitting room is.
Yeah.
Nothing's tethered. It's all absolutely free.
Yeah.
What transforms this contemporary warehouse structure from cavernous to cosy is the subtle colour palette of vintage furniture and the generous use of sensuous textiles.
I'm going to take the weight off my sling bags. Oh. It's very calm in here, Piers. It's church-like.
Caroline's right. This does have a church-like quality because, of course, this is the main hall. And the back are the vestry spaces, the smaller spaces subservient to the main event, which in this case is a very rudimentary kitchen. It's almost like the scullery that a manor house would have had, but made in a 21st century fashion out of very, very straightforward bits and pieces, lit by a single shaft of light from above, hitting all of this masonry. And then here, I mean, the depth of this wall, it's 4 foot thick, this wall, and it's taking me upstairs through what looks like an ancient stone staircase. Upstairs is very different from a church. This is industrial steel. This is bridge technology, and the whole of the top of this house is really one big truss that lifts up that timber box above the concrete. And what we have up here has a very different character from the room below. The room below is big, grand, and formal. The room up here is much smaller. The bedroom has a cabin-like quality. I mean, this could be on a boat somewhere. It's lined in timber from top to bottom. Acoustically, it's very different. It's really warm. And these shutters are really rudimentary. They're simple, big pieces of timber. The top is held open just by a timber prop. The bottom one is hung by a chain. Again, this structure here, this is just all the exposed bolt heads, and this is really simple, pretty unrefined steel. There's nothing fancy about it.
But the windows here are sophisticated. Unsurprising, as owner José Ferreira has a company that specialises in manufacturing high-tech frames and glass.
José, Caroline, lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for inviting us into this absolutely wonderful house. What's it like living in this house with the family?
É fantástico porque a casa é muito flexível, é muito criativa, ela própria pode transformar-se, a configuração da casa pode transformar-se facilmente em vários tipos de ambiente da abertura que ela tem. E quase que se pode dizer que a casa pode viver inclusivamente as estações do ano. Ela pode ser muito aberta, muito fechada, pode receber grandes grupos ou pequenos grupos, e viver com a família nesta casa é muito interessante, muito agradável.
There's something very particular about the way the house is made and the way the elements come together. And much like a tree that has a canopy held up on a trunk, the house above that piece of ground is an almost tree-like structure. So what you have is a real sense of, landscape that kind of comes through, wraps, right the way around the house, sort of framing the house when you see it in landscape.
And with those windows, what a frame.
Coming out into this courtyard space through this glass partition is really fabulous, because this is what José does for a living. He works with architects using glass, which is his speciality. And not only does that door slide open really elegantly and beautiful, but this one does too. So opening up this whole Riyadh space, a courtyard area that you can use in the summer when it's hot and it keeps you in the shade, or even in the autumn. Like now, you can use these spaces which are quite sheltered when the wind is blowing hard up the valley, and it brings you in from the outside into this wonderful master bedroom. And unlike the rooms in the other side of the house, the other guest bedrooms, which are upstairs and small and cosy and wooden, this one has much more elegant proportions.
With a 5-metre ceiling, a giraffe could get a good night's kip in here without getting a crick in its neck.
So you're still connected, so you can still see through the building and all the glass and the wood in there. But if you want to be away from your guests or your children or something, it enables you to get away and have a little bit of privacy in a really beautiful space.
This house is intimate and impressive, stylish and fun, combining stunning architecture and great taste.
quite nippy now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm quite glad we can light the fire. I do love the house.
It's a really elemental building in many ways in terms of how it connects us with nature, all the materials and the noise and the textures of everything.
And the house itself, the wood and the concrete, they really complement each other.
For me, each Portuguese house we've seen has been really ambitious from an architectural perspective, while at the same time being sympathetic to its context. Portugal has been astonishingly diverse in its culture, in its landscape, in its people, and in its buildings.
They've been subtle, they've been inscrutable, they've been very beautiful, rather like Portugal itself.
You sound like you've had a good time.
I have, thank you.
I think it's time, Caroline, to go and see how the other half live.
Talk about welcome to my humble abode. Cool. That is a whole lot of house.
He's Piers Taylor, an award-winning architect.
I mean, the depth of this wall, it's 4 foot thick.
After you, my lord.
And she's Caroline Quentin, acclaimed actress and passionate property developer.
This house has the perfect ratio of bedrooms to swimming pools.
We've been given the keys to some of the most incredible houses in the world.
If we were left alone here for any amount of time, I have a feeling...
We would ruin this house. To discover the design innovation, passion and endurance needed to transform architectural vision into an extraordinary home.
Look, I'm dumbstruck.
We're travelling the globe.
Meeting architects and owners to explore how their daring homes respond uniquely to local landscape, climate and culture.
I think this is probably the greatest house I've ever been in.
Whether it's battling the elements to construct a dream home on dramatic Scandinavian terrain.
The architect was nervous that things would go wrong. He couldn't bear to look at it.
Pushing the boundaries of European experimentation.
I think that's it.
I think it is. When I looked at the proposal, in the beginning I was almost shocked.
Celebrating craftsmanship and beauty in Asia.
We've likened this house to dripping chocolate sauce over vanilla ice cream.
Or going all out for glamour in America.
You just do what you do best, is to create a masterpiece.
Piers, is this too Miami?
We're on a grand tour of Switzerland.
A country known for its shimmering lakes and snowy mountain peaks.
Don't forget the bulging bank accounts.
Of course. Its 8 million citizens are among the wealthiest in the world.
It's not a big country, is it, Switzerland?
It's tiny. It's pushed up against all these other countries with all that influence that means.
Yes, the Germans, the French, the Italians. So what kind of houses are we going to see?
In Switzerland, we're going to find extraordinary houses. They build brilliantly.
They do indeed. Whether it's an eccentric flight of fancy...
I'm going to take a little walk up the wall.
Ooh! Or a more serious architectural marvel.
I love this austerity.
It's like a monk's cell.
This is a nation of creative architects and skilled craftspeople who are making buildings that are simply breathtaking.
This is what I found. And this is clearly what this entire house is about.
First stop on our Swiss adventure takes us to an alpine idyll, amid ancient pine forests and meadows of breathtaking loveliness.
Picture postcard, Swiss landscape, real ski country.
This is Switzerland, but only just. We're only just into Switzerland because this is France, just there, actually.
And of course, skiing means it's chalet country too, which we can see.
But these typically Swiss houses built to withstand snowy winters with thick walls and overhanging roofs aren't what we've come for. We're visiting a home that shows what's possible when an architect takes a traditional building form and transforms it into a contemporary language.
And here it is, the modern version of the traditional Swiss chalet.
And how cute. This weekend wilderness retreat was built on land belonging to the owner's family. Perched on a cliff edge, this angular black timber cabin nods to its vernacular ancestry. but its shape has been dramatically reimagined. It is a chalet that's been pulled apart and tweaked and
Reassembled into a modern way, yeah.
It's also a piece of mountain.
Yes, it mirrors the mountains beautifully. I wonder what the two halves are about.
Well, this one is living and eating and stuff, and the other, well, let's go and find out. The house is split into two sections with a cleft at the back and doors and walls at unusual angles to one another. On the ground floor, this V-shape separates the living space from a music room. Above, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and an office have fantastic mountain views. The dark wood of the exterior contrasts dramatically with its surroundings. I always think the most important part of any building is the way in. Here we are arriving at the intersection between these two volumes, and also what looks like a bit of the inside peeled back to show you a bit of the internal skin coming out to greet you.
And it's all just made to encourage us to open the door. It's a pretty space. You walk right into that split between the two areas. And I like it because it feels almost like Goldilocks might walk in.
It's a very particular sensation, arriving up into the mountains, this craggy, wild landscape, stepping into this glowing, honey-coloured space. The timber-lined entrance directs you into a warm and welcoming living space.
Gosh, pink! I did not expect to find pink in this environment.
You thought it'd just be more wood?
Yeah, I did, but it's quite fluffy and romantic in here. And you wouldn't have thought so from outside because it looks incredibly practical. But of course it's romantic. You only have to look at the incredible view to realise it's people who love being in this environment. And here's a fantastic kitchen. I think you'll like this, P. This material, this wood, this pine just carries right on through. Only now we've got the addition of this fantastic black granite, which sort of replicates the mountains outside, but also the wood, so that brings the trees that surround this house into the house.
It's interesting, that limited palette of materials that architects really get off on, the sense that you restrain your palette to just one or two things.
I love the idea of that, but I do think sometimes, domestically, life leads you in other directions.
But one material allows you to live in quite a cluttered way. I mean, I have 4 children with stuff everywhere. The advantage is that one material binds everything together, and however slovenly you are, like me, the house will generally look okay.
So you can throw anything at it, really?
Yeah.
I want to go and have a little look and see what's in this room next door. Piers? Hi! This is a music room.
You'll be in your element.
Yes.
I'm going to go upstairs.
OK, see you in a minute.
This is a house of sharp angles, but the pine on the floor, the walls and the ceiling make the interior spaces surprisingly comfortable. The hustle and bustle of city life feels far away here.
How wonderful to have a room in a mountain escape completely devoted to music. I mean, it's like something out of a fairy tale, isn't it? And what a place to create. To be in this environment must be so inspirational.
Upstairs, the sleeping quarters are tucked up under the angled roof of the house. This really is a bedroom where you can have your cake and eat it. You can be perched like a bird in landscape, or you can lie back and be protected from it, cosseted by this warm timber.
This deceptively spacious house has made the owners feel profoundly connected to the mountains.
This is what this house is all about for me. about contemplation, meditation, and yodeling.
This house makes one simple move, and it does it really well. It started life as, like many chalets are, a square. That square was then cleft through the middle. One half splays out one side, the other half splays out another side. What that cleft allows is a very clear way to enter a house, which is in the middle, in between these two parts of the building. In elevation, the house takes a Swiss chalet, it cleaves it through the middle, drawing on the way these buildings have been made for generations in this landscape and reconfiguring them for the 21st century. This modern chalet was built as a peaceful sanctuary for its owners, Olivier and Céline, as an antidote to their busy urban lives. So what was your brief to your architect?
The moment we knew we were building here, it meant, okay, we're building for a lifetime, family time, perhaps even the next generation. We told him we want, a big access to the outside from inside the house.
And this split?
This split came from him.
And that split breaks the house down into smaller pieces, but it also gives an interesting relationship between those two living spaces. Tell me about that.
I think the best example to tell you about it is I can be in the living room and looking through the window, and I can see my wife playing the harp in her music place. And
she's a harpist?
She's a harpist, yeah, and she's got her own music room.
So that's very beautiful. You can gaze lovingly at your wife through that picture window.
Absolutely.
This split is an unconventional architectural move. But elsewhere, Simon Chezet, who designed this modern take on a traditional chalet, was keen to make a virtue of the region's architectural heritage.
When I arrived, I saw the house was lifted up. Why is there that overhang?
We thought it was interesting to have this kind of sensation being just above ground and then
hovering.
Just hovering, exactly. So this is one reason. The second reason is you can't just put timber directly on the ground. You have to have a kind of a
buffer.
Yeah, exactly. So we have this concrete base which plays with tradition. In all the rural chalet in the Swiss mountains, they invented these things, which is lifting the wooden piece just above the ground so that mice couldn't go inside to eat all the, I don't know how to call it.
Grain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The clean lines of Simon's design might suggest that this was a simple build, but appearances can be deceptive.
At the beginning, we knew that we had to use the helicopter because the road was too small.
Oh.
I mean, the trucks couldn't come here, so we took that into consideration.
So the external shell of the house was created by prefabricating 40 separate timber pieces, flying them in and assembling them on site.
Everything was built like a toy, a puzzle or something like this.
Like a wooden puzzle being put together.
Puzzle, and then in less than 2 days, the house was built.
And the team's hard work paid off as they produced a really accomplished piece of architecture. How do you feel having spent that time in this house?
It recharges the batteries. It's been 4 years, and yet it's the same feeling. We open the door, we enter the house, and we're like, wow, this is just powerful. And you feel just at ease, quiet, relaxing. It has a direct impact.
The completion of this contemporary chalet has left a lasting impression on its creator.
When a house like this is finished and you walk away, what's it like to come back and to visit it?
It's such an important moment. I mean, and then this is extremely something which is very special. And coming back and looking at it, actually, we did well. My job was okay.
More than okay.
I'd second that. We're now heading into Switzerland's deep south to a town called Brissago.
on the shores of Lake Maggiore.
This region is called Ticino, and it's famous for its mild and Mediterranean climate. The architecture, cuisine and culture are closely related to neighbouring Italy. Italian is the official language.
Certainly beautiful, isn't it, the scenery?
It is. It's gorgeous. Love being here, Central Europe.